Night falls on the prehistoric world, and darkness spreads across the vast plains. There are no city lights, no glow of civilization, only the purity of a sky filled with stars. In this ancient silence, our early ancestors gather around a gentle fire. The flames flicker and dance, casting trembling shadows on stone walls, as above them the heavens unveil an endless panorama of glowing points. The Milky Way arches overhead like a river of light, a mysterious band dividing the sky. For these first stargazers, the night sky is alive with wonder and unknowns. Each sparkling light up above is an invitation to imagine, to dream, and to find meaning in the silent darkness. Under this canopy of stars, the world feels at once enormous and intimate. Enormous, because the stars seem so far beyond reach, scattered jewels on a black velvet expanse, stretching to infinity. Intimate, because every person gathered by the fire shares the same sky, the same shining map above, night after night. The earliest humans tilt their heads back and gaze upward in awe. Perhaps a child points at a cluster of stars, shimmering softly, and asks what they are. An elder, eyes reflecting firelight and starlight, begins to weave a story. And so, a timeless tradition is born, storytelling by starlight. In the hush of primeval nights, those distant lights become characters in cosmic tales. A pattern of bright stars might be seen as the outline of a great beast roaming the heavens. Over there, a line of 3 bright stars could form the belt of a mighty hunter eternally chasing his prey across the sky. Elsewhere, a sparkling curve might become a scorpion's tail, poised to sting. To eyes seeking familiarity in the unknown, random stars connect like dots in a game of celestial connect the dots, revealing pictures that speak to the soul. Each pattern becomes a constellation, not yet recorded in any book, but alive in the imagination. These shapes are more than just pictures. They are the heroes, monsters, and ancestors of a culture's mythology, shining down from above. There is comfort in these starry stories. In a world where so much is a mystery, why the sun disappears each night, what lies beyond the hills or ocean, having stories offers a sense of understanding and security. The night can be frightening and vast, but when you see a familiar pattern in the sky, it feels a little less lonely. Imagine a family tens of thousands of years ago, huddled close as darkness envelops the land. One of them gestures upward at a cluster of tiny stars. Perhaps they say, "See those lights? That is the campfire of our ancestors, burning in the sky to guide us." And the children, hearing this, feel watched over and safe. The stars become kin, guardians in the night. Across countless generations, these oral tales about the night sky pass down like precious heirlooms. Each storyteller adds something new or emphasizes something important for their time. A lesson, a warning, a hope. One generation might teach that a certain star is a hunter, and when he rises early, it is time to prepare for the great animal migrations. Another generation might say that those same stars are the eyes of a mighty spirit watching over the tribe. The specifics change and flourish, but the core idea remains. The sky is full of stories, and those stories are meaningful. We will never know the very first story told about the stars. Those words are lost to prehistory, dissolved into the air of ages long past. Yet, clues remain, whispering to us from ancient artifacts and paintings. Deep within caves in what is now France, for instance, early artists painted images of animals, bulls, birds, horses, on stone walls, perhaps 15,000 or more years ago. Among these paintings, there is a striking scene, a mighty bull painted in bold lines, and just above the bull's shoulder, a small cluster of black dots. Could it be that this ancient artist painted not only a creature of the earth, but also a piece of the sky? Many have wondered if those dots above the bull's shoulder represent the Pleiades, a tight cluster of 7 stars that rides on the shoulder of the constellation we today call Taurus, the bull. If true, it means that even back then, humans recognized this same cluster of stars and linked it with the idea of a bull in the sky. In that silent cavern, by the light of flickering torches, someone may have pointed at the bull painting and told a story about a heavenly aurochs and the 7 little lights that follow it. It is a tantalizing hint that some constellations in our modern sky could trace their lineage to the Ice Age. Under open skies, ancient people also built stone markers and circles aligned with the heavens, long before writing or cities. On an open plain, giant stones might be dragged and raised in arrangements that echo the paths of the sun and stars. At night, standing among those stones, the view of the sky is unbroken and overwhelming. Think of our ancestors watching the midwinter stars rise between 2 standing rocks, knowing that the darkest days would soon give way to light. The knowledge of the sky became part of their lore. They learned which stars rose just before dawn, when it was time to sow seeds or to follow migrating herds. They wove those practical lessons into myths. A bright star appearing in early morning might be a celestial bird heralding the coming spring. A group of stars sinking below the horizon for a season might be a god journeying to the underworld, promising to return. The earliest stargazers likely did not separate science from myth, observation from imagination. For them, it was all one. The sky was their calendar and compass, but also their storybook and scripture. In the movements of the heavens, they saw the turning wheel of time and the will of divine forces. Every dusk was an opportunity to watch the eternal dance above and to feel connected to something greater than themselves. The slow rotation of the starry dome, the way certain stars would vanish in one season and reappear in another. All these patterns were noted with keen eyes and explained with creative minds. Perhaps they believed a giant, invisible wheel turned the stars, or a great cosmic river carried them across the night. Some might have imagined the sky itself as a tent or a roof held up by a world tree or mountain, with tiny holes through which a celestial fire shone, each hole a star. By and by, distinct constellations became widely recognized among various tribes and peoples, even those far apart. It's fascinating to consider that a constellation like the Great Bear, a shape many today call the Big Dipper, appears in the folklore of cultures across Europe, Asia, and North America. Long before those peoples ever met, if they met at all, they looked up and saw more or less the same shape. A large, powerful animal in the stars, often seen as a bear, sometimes as a big deer or another creature. The similarity in these stories suggests that this grouping of stars caught human eyes very early. Perhaps ancient hunter-gatherers carried a story of a great bear in the sky as they migrated across the world. It's a captivating thought. A tale told by the campfire in one era travels on the tongues of descendants, wandering far and wide, until many ages later, distant peoples still recall the outline of that heavenly creature drawn in stars. Night after night, generation after generation, the storytelling continued. The children who heard the star tales grew up and told them to their children, who added their own observations. The constellations were like a tapestry woven by countless hands, threads of narrative added over centuries. Even as tribes moved or environments changed, the stars were a constant, shining reliably in their courses. Under the ancient skies, human eyes and hearts found connections between the patterns above and life below. Perhaps a tribe living near mountains imagined the Milky Way was the snow gleaming on distant peaks, reflected in the sky. Those in deserts might have seen it as the great river of the heavens, since water was scarce on the land. We can imagine a circle of listeners tilting their heads up as an elder's voice murmurs a myth, maybe about a wise old wanderer who climbed into the heavens and became a star, or a brave animal spirit placed among the stars to watch over people forever. In the telling and retelling, the boundaries between earth and sky, reality and imagination, melted away for a time. In time, human societies grew larger and more complex. Language developed rich vocabularies. Symbols slowly turned into early writing. The stars and their stories would soon be recorded in clay, stone, and ink. But for now, let us linger in that pre-literate world a moment longer, where knowledge lives in memory and myth. Picture one last scene. As the embers of the campfire glow softly, a small group of people steps away from the firelight and into the open, where the full glory of the Milky Way spills across the sky. They stretch out together on cool grass or a flat rock, pointing out shapes in the glittering sprawl above. A few murmured words identify a pattern, perhaps their name for the great bear, or the hunter, or the mother and child. And a child repeats the names, committing them to memory. The stars seem to wheel slowly as the night deepens. One by one, the tribe drifts into sleep under that ancestral sky, their dreams coloured by the myths they've heard. Overhead, the constellations keep their silent vigil. By now, these starry figures are already ancient, older than anyone can fathom. They will remain for ages to come, waiting for the next curious soul to notice them and give them new life through story. The night sky, even in humanity's infancy, was a sky full of stories. And as dawn approaches in our imagined ancient night, we sense that this tradition, gazing upward, wondering and weaving tales, will carry on. The first faint glow appears in the east. The stars begin to fade, but the tales they inspired linger in minds and hearts. These earliest stargazers have ignited a spark, a flame of curiosity and myth that will never be extinguished. In the millennia to follow, under different skies and new constellations, people will continue what those ancients began. They will name the stars and tell their legends, ensuring that the night sky remains, forever, a map of stories laid out in light. Let us travel now to the land between two great rivers, the cradle of civilization under a starry canopy. It is a warm night in ancient Mesopotamia, thousands of years ago. Above the flat rooftops of mud brick houses in a city like Ur or Babylon, the sky stretches vast and clear. High on a stepped temple tower, a ziggurat, a lone priest astronomer stands, gazing at the heavens. In one hand, he holds a damp clay tablet, in the other, a stylus. As the stars wheel overhead, he marks down their positions and portents with careful, wedge-shaped strokes. For him and his people, these stars are not just tiny lights. They are a divine script spread across the dome of night. The sky is full of signs and stories given by the gods, if only one knows how to read them. In the darkness, the ziggurat's height lifts the priest closer to the stars, or so it feels. A gentle breeze from the desert riffles his robe. He squints up at a bright reddish point of light rising in the east, the planet Mars, and notes its position near a certain pattern of stars. Perhaps he murmurs a prayer to Nergal, the god of war, with whom the red planet is associated. Then he turns to the constellations glittering in the south. He recognizes them instantly. There is the Scorpion, to his people, a creature sacred to the underworld gods, and above it, the bow of the Archer. To the west, another familiar shape is low on the horizon, the great bull of heaven, which was high in the sky earlier in the evening. Each of these constellations carries rich meaning in Mesopotamian lore, and to name them is to invoke the stories behind them. The bull of heaven, in particular, is a creature of legend here. In a famous tale sung by Sumerian bards and later written on tablets as the Epic of Gilgamesh, this fearsome bull was sent down from the sky by the goddess Ishtar to punish the hero Gilgamesh. When Gilgamesh and his companions slew the bull, its sacrifice brought years of bounty to their city. Now, when the people of Mesopotamia look up at the constellation of the bull, what we know today as part of Taurus, they remember that story. They see the bull's shining eye, a red star we call Aldebaran, glaring from the sky. They see the tight cluster of stars nearby, the seven sisters, Pleiades, and imagine them as sparks from the bull's nostrils, or as the seven divine judges who accompanied it. The rising of the bull constellation in the spring is a season of renewal and power, and farmers know that when those stars dominate the dawn, the rains will come and the crops will grow. Myth and practical life intertwine seamlessly. Not far from the bull, the Mesopotamians identify the figure of the great twins. These twin stars and their surrounding pattern were seen as guardians of the gates of the underworld, or as twin deities watching over mortal affairs. Some said they embodied a pair of valiant brothers, or divine guards, armed and alert. When these stars stood at the horizon at dusk, perhaps people whispered that the gates of dusk were being protected by the twins, ensuring that no unwelcome spirit passed from the world of the dead into the realm of the living. And look there, a proud lion strides among the stars. In the heat of summer, the constellation of the lion dominates the night, and Mesopotamian stargazers know this as a symbol of the fierce sun and the goddess Ishtar's might. Ishtar, whom the Sumerians called Inanna, is often depicted with lions, symbols of war and victory. So when the lion constellation rises, bringing with it the searing heat, they say it is Ishtar's roar in the heavens, the sign of her presence. The bright star at the lion's heart, which we know as Regulus, they named the king's star. To them, it was a royal omen, representing favour from Ishtar to the king on earth, a celestial jewel granting victory in battle if it shone propitiously. Near the zenith of the summer sky, our priest can trace the pattern of the scorpion, its curved tail and sting gleaming. The people here have stories of scorpion people, powerful guardians placed at the edges of the world. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, it was scorpion men and women who stood guard at the tunnel through which the sun travelled at night. They warn and ultimately allow Gilgamesh to pass on his quest for immortality. When Mesopotamians behold the Scorpion constellation, they see those ancient guardians eternally on duty. They might imagine that as the red star Antares, the Scorpion's heart, reaches the highest point at midnight, the gates of night are open, and the sun is somewhere on its perilous journey beneath the earth, protected by the Scorpion's watch. There are many such constellations mapped by these first astronomers. In one corner of the sky, they see a figure called the Old Man, perhaps what we call Perseus today, representing a wise ancestor or a primordial being. In another, they see the plough, a tribute to the importance of agriculture, suspended eternally in the heights of heaven. The plough's position near the north, circling the pole, reminds them of a tool hung up on a peg in the barn when not in use. Indeed, they imagined the north celestial pole as a great peg holding up the heavens, with the plough hanging from it, just as a farmer might hang his plough when the work was done. Such imagery ties the work of humans directly to the stars above, as if to say every field ploughed on earth has its mirror in the sky. The Mesopotamian sky is crowded with divine figures. There is the true shepherd of Anu, a constellation we associate with Orion, shining as a faithful protector and herald of the gods. They see the wagon, part of what we call Ursa Major, near the Great Bear Shape, which they thought of as a celestial chariot or wagon of heaven. The goatfish, Capricornus in later terms, rises from the southern waters, a strange hybrid creature heralding the turning of seasons, symbolizing transitions and duality, and the figure of a man pouring water from an overflowing jar. A constellation they called the Great One, which brings to mind the life-giving rivers and rains. Even a modest cluster of stars could become a symbol. Near the Scorpion they recognized a set of scales, representing balance and justice, under the watch of Shamash, the sun god who judged truth. Each constellation carries not just a name, but a role in the grand cosmic drama. To the people of Sumer and Babylon, these star patterns were far from random. They were placed with purpose. One old Babylonian myth teaches that after the chaos dragon Tiamat was defeated by the hero god Marduk, Marduk set about establishing order in the universe. He fixed the stars in the sky as stations for the great gods, arranging the celestial figures to correspond to the months and the seasons. In that story, it's said that Marduk placed 3 stars for each of the 12 months, essentially creating a heavenly calendar, an idea that later generations would recognize as the zodiac. By appointing the year's divisions and the stars for each segment, Marduk ensured that as time flowed, humans could read the will of the gods through the changing skies. In reality, it was the careful observations of countless nameless sky watchers that discerned the cyclical movements of stars and planets. But wrapping this knowledge in myth gave it a divine authority and an enchanting narrative. Each night's sky was thus like a sacred text to be interpreted. Nothing happened in heaven that wasn't meaningful. A star appearing where it hadn't been seen before might be a new deity rising, or a divine omen of change. The Mesopotamians observed comets, eclipses, and the wandering planets, which they called stray stars, with diligence. For example, the planet Venus, Inanna's star, was charted with extraordinary precision. They knew it alternated appearances as the morning star and the evening star, disappearing for days in between. They imagined this as Inanna, the goddess of love and war, descending into the underworld and returning, just as told in their myths. When Venus vanished from the sky, they recounted how Inanna went to the land of the dead, and when it returned, shining at dawn, they celebrated the goddess's revival. How comforting and fascinating it must have been to tie the motions of a bright planet to a beloved story, to see the heavens themselves enacting the cycles of loss and rebirth. From Mesopotamia comes the oldest star catalogues we know. Clay tablets survive with lists of constellations and observations. One of the earliest, called the 3 stars each, lists stars assigned to 3 great gods for each month of the year, effectively listing 36 constellations or star groupings. Imagine the patience and care it took over generations to compile such records. Night after night, in good weather and bad, these ancient astronomers observed the rising and setting of stars, recording when a star first became visible at dawn after being hidden by the sun's glare, what we call its heliacal rising. These events were crucial markers. For example, the heliacal rising of the Pleiades cluster in the east signaled the approach of spring. The people looked for these signals and tied them to their ritual calendars and planting seasons. On those tablets of clay, alongside observations, there were likely notes of omens, interpretations of what it meant when a certain star shone especially bright or when an eclipse occurred. An ancient text might read, "If the star of the great lion is dark, the king will face war." Or, "If Venus remains hidden for longer than expected, there will be famine." The language of the stars was a rich vocabulary of signs and warnings. To a modern mind, this is astrology's birth. But to the ancient Mesopotamian mind, it was simply the gods communicating. The heavens formed a grand scoreboard of cosmic intentions. Kings and commoners alike would seek guidance from those who could read this scoreboard. A dynasty might plan a campaign or hold off on building a temple based on whether Jupiter, associated with Marduk, rose favourably or not. Yet beyond the pragmatic use of stars for omens and calendar, there was also pure wonder. Consider a Babylonian family out on their flat roof at night, escaping the day's heat. They might listen to an elder recount how the great hero Ninurta hunted the sky panther, a constellation akin perhaps to part of Cygnus, or how the loyal hound of the goddess Gula sits among the stars as the constellation of the sitting dog in the area of Hercules. The children look up, wide-eyed, trying to see the shapes of the panther or the dog in the sprinkling of stars. The night breeze carries the scent of the Euphrates River and the distant sound of a flute. Overhead, the Milky Way, which some called the River of Heaven, flows with faint light. Perhaps one child asks, "Who pours the stars into the sky?" And the parent answers with a gentle laugh. Each night the gods sift glowing sand through their fingers, and the grains that fall become stars. It's not an official doctrine, just a fanciful bedtime answer, yet it weaves the human heart to the cosmic canvas above with threads of imagination. As centuries passed, the constellation lore of Mesopotamia would spread far and wide. Many of their star names and concepts travelled, through trade, through cultural exchange, and found their way into other civilizations' sky lore. When we use names like Scorpion, Leo, the lion, or Taurus, the bull, for constellations today, we are echoing those very old stories first told beside the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. It's humbling to realize that the figures identified by those first astronomers have never really left us. They shine on in our modern star maps, though often with new stories attached. Now our Mesopotamian priest finishes his nightly vigil. He etches a last mark on his clay tablet and carefully sets it aside to dry. Far below, the city is mostly asleep, though a few lights glimmer where someone tends to a restless animal or a sick child. The stars above begin their late-night descent toward the western horizon. The priest takes one more lingering look at the sky, at the bull, the lion, the scorpion, and all the others, and whispers a thank you to the gods for the messages of the night. As he climbs down the ziggurat steps, he knows that tomorrow, and the next night, and the next, there will always be new stories to read in the sky, and new wonders to record. The legacy of the first constellations is alive in his heart and his records. Under the same sky, to the west in another great land, there is a ribbon of green along a mighty river cutting through the desert. There, a different people watch the night and see their own gods among the stars. The stage of the heavens is set, and soon new characters, ones that will shape another set of ancient myths, will step into view. Our journey now follows the starlight to the land of the Nile, where Egyptian eyes gaze upward and find their own eternal stories written in the sky. Night in ancient Egypt is a time of both tranquility and anticipation. Along the Nile, the day's heat fades, and a million stars pierce the velvety sky above the desert. Picture a small temple on the river's edge, its columns painted with lotus flowers and winged suns. On the flat roof of this temple, a priest of Amun stands silently, scanning the horizon. It is pre-dawn in midsummer, and the air is still, save for the gentle lapping of the Nile against its banks. The priest's eyes are fixed on the eastern horizon, where the sky is just beginning to lighten. He is waiting for a single star, a star that means life or death for his people, the herald of the flood. In the cool hush before dawn, there, a spark of light emerges low in the sky. The priest's heart swells with relief and joy. Sopdet has returned. Sopdet is the name the Egyptians give to that brilliant star we know as Sirius, the brightest in the night. Its yearly first appearance just before sunrise, the heliacal rising, marks the beginning of the new year and the season of inundation when the Nile will flood its banks, renewing the fields with rich silt. To the Egyptians, this is no coincidence, but a divine promise. They personify Sirius as a goddess, Sopdet, often linked to Isis, the great mother goddess. Each year, they celebrate the coming of Sopdet, the moment when this star returns from its absence, heralding that the waters will rise and bring abundance. On this dawn, as the priest watches that bluish star twinkle in the growing light, he clasps his hands and whispers a prayer of thanks. Isis Sopdet has kept her promise once again. The Nile will flow, the crops will grow, and the cycle of life continues under the watchful stars. As daylight brightens and Sirius fades in the morning sky, the priest descends to inform the people. The new year has begun with the rising of the sacred star. All around, villagers smile and prepare festivities, confident that their beloved river will soon swell. They believe it is the tears of Isis, weeping with joy at reuniting with her husband Osiris, that caused the Nile to overflow. And indeed, just before dawn, another constellation had been visible higher in the sky, the constellation of Sar, which the Egyptians revere and connect with Osiris. Sar is a figure comprised of stars from what we know today as Orion and beyond. Over time, the Egyptians came to see in that celestial figure the form of Osiris, Lord of the dead and rebirth. Each year, Orion's stars and Sirius's star emerge together in the pre-dawn summer sky, and the myth of Isis and Osiris plays out above. Isis, Sopdet, rises searching for Osiris, Sa Orion, and soon the life-giving flood follows, like a gift from their union. When night fully falls over Egypt, it reveals a cosmic tapestry, rich with gods and creatures. The Egyptians do not see the night as empty darkness. It is the realm of the goddess Nut. Look up and envision Nut. Her body is the sky itself, arching high above earth, fingertips touching the western horizon and toes touching the eastern, covered in dark blue and sprinkled with stars. Each twilight, Nut swallows the sun god Ra, sending him into her starry belly to travel through the underworld. Each dawn, she gives birth to him anew in the east, bringing daylight back to the world. The stars that glint on her body are 1,000 lanterns, lighting Ra's way through the darkness, or perhaps countless souls moving with him in the eternal cycle of night and day. Under Nut's protecting arch, the Egyptians feel cradled by the cosmos. They are literally living under the body of a goddess who cares for order and renewal. On a clear Egyptian night, the Milky Way arcs overhead like a pale river of stars. Many in Egypt see it as a heavenly counterpart to their earthly Nile, just as the Nile flows through the land, bringing life. The Milky Way was imagined as a celestial river flowing through the sky. Some tales said it was the Nile of the heavens, along which the solar bark of Ra sailed during the night. Perhaps as families sit on their mud brick rooftops in the cool night breeze, a father might point out that shimmering band and tell his children, "See there, that is the great river above, where Ra steers his boat through the stars until morning." The children, eyes wide, might envision their sun god on a gilded boat, accompanied by stars as attendants, gliding through a gentle starlit current until sunrise. Dotted across the sky are constellations that the Egyptians have named and woven into their stories. Turning our gaze northward, we find the stars that never set, the imperishable stars. In Egyptian belief, these stars near the North Celestial Pole were profoundly significant. They call them Ikamusek, the indestructibles. Every night, these stars circle around and around, but they never dip below the horizon, never disappear. To the Egyptians, they are a symbol of eternity and unending life. Is it any wonder that the pharaohs, who sought eternal life, looked to these stars? In the oldest pyramid texts, inscribed deep in the dark chambers of Pharaoh Unus's pyramid, the king's soul proclaims its destiny: to fly up and join the imperishable stars, to become undying and unsetting as they are. Lying in his stone sarcophagus, the king was surrounded by spells and starry prayers on the walls, guiding him upward to the northern sky. When those texts were read, one can imagine priests in the funeral rites stepping outside the pyramid at night and pointing to the north, to that steadfast cluster of stars, perhaps part of Ursa Minor and Draco, and invoking them as the king's new home among the gods. Among those northern constellations, the Egyptians saw figures of their own. One prominent shape was known as the bull's thigh, a distinctive group of stars we identify as part of the Big Dipper, Ursa Major. To Egyptian eyes, these stars outlined the hind leg of a bull. This bull's thigh was more than just an animal part. It tied into their mythology of Osiris and his brother Set. Some legends held that Set, in his fury, had torn off one of the bull's legs and flung it into the sky, where it became a constellation. Thus, the bull's thigh in the sky could be seen as a remnant of an ancient drama, eternally hanging above as a reminder of that tale of betrayal and justice. The priests would point it out during ritual ceremonies, cautioning that even in the heavens, the deeds of gods were recorded in light. Not far from the bull's thigh, another creature prowls the northern heavens, a great hippopotamus with the tail of a crocodile. This is the goddess Taweret, depicted on the ceilings of tombs and temples as a fearsome yet protective figure in the circumpolar stars. Taweret is the guardian of childbirth and women, a composite being with a hippo's body, a crocodile's tail, and lion's limbs. In the sky, she stands on her hind legs near the north, holding a kind of staff for support. To the Egyptians, Taweret in the sky watches over the nighttime world, keeping malevolent forces at bay. Sometimes they included a small crocodile on her back in star maps, representing Sobek, the crocodile god. Together, the two form a constellation group, sometimes called the Great Hippopotamus and the Crocodile. On quiet evenings, mothers might assure their children that Taweret, up above, was guarding the night like a celestial nanny, keeping them safe from harm as they slept. Egyptian constellations also inhabited the southern skies that rose and set. One of the most important of these was Orion's stars, which, as mentioned, they associated with Osiris. They referred to Orion's belt and surrounding stars as Sa, often depicting it as a proud man, the embodiment of Osiris adorned with the stars. When Orion stood high in the winter sky, the Egyptians saw Osiris reigning in the heavens. At the same time, nearby, the star Sirius shone as Isis. To the Egyptians, the sky mirrored their most sacred story: Osiris and Isis, king and queen of heaven, watching over the realm of the living and the dead. Some texts even speak of the soul of Osiris residing in Orion and the soul of Isis in Sirius. What comfort it must have given them to think that their beloved deities had fixed thrones in the night sky, shimmering down each clear evening. All through the Egyptian night, the stars also served a practical purpose woven with myth. The priests in temples used a merket, a kind of astrolabe or plumb-line tool, and a sighting instrument called a bay, to observe certain key stars. Night after night, they noted the rising times of 36 special star groups, known as decans. Each decan would appear on the horizon at a roughly 10-day interval, marking the passage of their 360-day civil calendar. These decans were more than mere clockwork. They were deities too, each a minor god or spirit of time. On coffin lids and tomb ceilings, the Egyptians painted tables of these decan stars with figures: a man, a falcon, a jackal, a serpent, representing the spirit of each star group. By tracking them, they could tell the time of night and also perform the correct rituals at the right hours. Lying under a blanket of stars, a temple astronomer might recite the names of each decan as it rose, like calling roll for the gods. We thank you, Septet, Sirius, who opens the year. We see you, Sa, Lord of the winter sky. We honor you, Mesektiu, the bull's thigh, circling forever. Each name a poetry of the cosmos that kept their society aligned with the divine order of the heavens. These observations were not merely scientific. For the Egyptians, maintaining the calendar and the temple rituals according to the stars was an act of preserving Ma'at, the principle of cosmic harmony and truth. If the stars were properly observed and the festivals held at the right celestial moments, then the world would remain in balance. Thus, astronomy and mythology were two sides of the same sacred duty. Consider the Great Pyramid at Giza, built centuries before many of these star lists were written down. Its sides are perfectly aligned with the cardinal directions, and its internal shafts famously point towards certain stars. One shaft aimed toward the northern sky, targeting the imperishable star of that era, perhaps Thuban in the constellation Draco, the pole star of the Old Kingdom. Another shaft pointed southward toward Orion's belt. In this way, the pyramid was like a stone instrument, forever tuning itself to the music of the heavens, ensuring the pharaoh buried within would have his soul guided straight to the stars of the north, and also symbolically commune with Osiris in the south. Imagine the engineers and priests watching the night sky from the Giza plateau, adjusting their structure ever so precisely, so that when all was done, their king's resting place would be in perfect dialogue with the cosmos. Under the Egyptian sky, life and death were intimately connected with the stars. When someone died, they didn't say they vanished. They said that person went to the stars. On a balmy night, a farmer and his wife might sit outside their home after a long day's work and gaze upward. Perhaps they pick out a particular twinkling star and decide it is the soul of a departed parent watching over them. In Egyptian belief, the worthy dead could join the company of stars, either sailing with Ra on his nightly voyage or dwelling in the northern sky as blessed spirits. This belief comforted the living and gave them hope that nothing truly ended, like the stars that vanish at dawn and reappear at dusk. Life, too, was cyclical and eternal. As the night wears on and the constellations slowly drift westward, one can hear the gentle sounds of the Nile, frogs croaking, water whispering against the reeds. Overhead, Nut's starry form still spans the heavens, but on the eastern horizon, a faint glow announces that Ra's return is near. One by one, the stars that had ruled the night begin to fade, yielding to the greater light of day. To the Egyptians, this daily ritual was itself a story. The triumph of Ra over darkness, the renewal of Ma'at with each sunrise. But before the stars vanish completely, there is a moment of stillness when the sky is a deep blue and a few last points of light flicker. In that moment, an Egyptian might close their eyes and utter a brief thanks to the gods of the night, to Isis for her star of hope, to Osiris in Orion for watching over them, to Nut for sheltering the world in her vast embrace. With the break of day, the stars slip into their hidden daytime repose, and Egypt comes alive with sunlight and activity once more. Yet everyone knows that when evening comes, the whole magnificent pageant will unfold again. The goddess Nut will spangle the sky with stars. The imperishable lights will resume their vigil, and the sacred stories will once again play out above. The Egyptians build obelisks that catch the first and last rays of the sun, and inscribe their tombs with maps of the stars, all to remind themselves that the heavens are with them always. In their world, the celestial and the terrestrial are deeply intertwined. Through their myths and careful observations, the people of the Nile ensured that each night was not an unknown abyss, but a wellspring of meaning. They felt the presence of their deities in the constellations and trusted the stars to guide everything from their calendars to their spiritual hopes. As we leave this land of the Nile under its canopy of timeless stars, we carry with us a sense of how richly the ancient Egyptians read the night sky as a sacred text written by gods, full of wisdom, cycles, and comfort. Their constellation legends, from the indestructible stars of the north to the rising of Isis's star in the east, form an enduring part of humanity's oldest stories written in the stars. For countless generations, the stars have been humanity's constant companions. We began our journey under primeval skies, imagining pictures in the dark. We then saw how the first great civilizations, Sumer, Babylon, Egypt, inscribed those imaginings into myth and memory. This chapter in our story spans from the wordless nights of prehistory to the written records of ancient peoples, capturing the evolution of our relationship with the night sky. Over that vast expanse of time, one thing has remained unchanged. The stars continue to shine, and humans continue to look up in wonder. Think back to those early ancestors telling stories around the fire. their only library, the sky itself. Those stories lived only as long as someone could remember and retell them. Yet, remarkably, some of those tales proved so enduring that they survived the transition into writing thousands of years later. When the Sumerians pressed cuneiform wedges into clay to describe the constellations, they were freezing in time what had once been fluid oral lore. When Egyptian priests painted star maps on tomb ceilings, they were preserving in pigment the celestial knowledge that had previously been shared by voice under open skies. The advent of writing was like catching starlight in a bottle. It allowed these oldest stories to be recorded and passed on beyond the lifespan of any single storyteller. It's moving to realize that many of the constellations and myths recorded in the earliest texts likely had a lineage stretching back into prehistory. The Great Bear that appears in Greek, Siberian, and Native American tales may have originally been whispered on cold Paleolithic nights as families huddled together for warmth. The Bull of Heaven in the Epic of Gilgamesh might descend from the awe felt by some Neolithic herders watching Taurus return to the spring sky, inspiring them to speak of a divine bull. The Egyptian reverence for Orion and Sirius could be a continuation of star myths told by desert nomads long before pyramids rose from the sand. Writing gave these ancient, wandering stories a permanent home, but the stories themselves were older than the symbols that captured them. Between the unwritten and the written, there were other ways our ancestors immortalized their star lore. Consider the great stone structures that predate writing. Stone circles, passage tombs, and monolithic temples aligned with the heavens. At sites like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, nearly 12,000 years old, stone circles and pillars stand adorned with carved animals, perhaps reflections of star patterns, hinting that even at humanity's dawn, people sought to connect Earth with sky. Millennia later, at Stonehenge in England, over 4,000 years old, massive stones were carefully arranged to align with the solstice sunrise and possibly certain star risings, a giant calendar in rock. In the far north of Scotland, ancient stone circles have orientations towards major stars as well, suggesting that even without writing, people found ways to mark the important celestial events in enduring stone. Evidence that a pastoral culture observed the heavens with devotion comes from Nabta Playa in the Sahara, where by around 5000 BCE, a ring of stones was erected to line up with the summer solstice sunrise and the positions of key stars on the horizon. Such monuments are silent, but if they could speak, they might tell the myths and meanings their builders attached to the sky. Myths we can only guess at now. In carving giant calendars out of rock, those early people were effectively saying, "We remember this star, this moment, this matters to us." It was a step toward writing, using landscape and architecture as a canvas for the sky's story. The transition from prehistory into the historical era of written myth was not a clean break, but a gradual blending. For a long time, oral tradition and written records coexisted. A Mesopotamian farmer might hear an old constellation tale from his grandmother by the hearth, a tale perhaps not recorded anywhere, and then see similar names or figures when he visits a temple and observes the star tablet a scribe is inscribing. An Egyptian sailor navigating the Nile by the stars might rely on practical knowledge passed down informally, even as temple astronomers formally charted those same stars on papyrus. Writing amplified and formalized the star lore. But it did not entirely replace the living practice of storytelling. People still gathered under the night sky to share the old tales, even as scholars penned them in books. One can imagine a learned Greek much later, reading myths of Orion or Andromeda from a scroll, then stepping outside on a clear night and pointing those figures out to friends, retelling the stories aloud with personal flourishes. The written and spoken traditions fed each other, ensuring the constellations remained vibrant in culture. Moreover, once star myths were written down, they could travel across both time and distance more easily. A clay tablet could be copied, a papyrus could be carried downriver or across the sea. Knowledge that once might have been confined to a single tribe or region could spread. We know that by the first millennium BCE, Babylonian star lore had reached as far as Greece, where scholars like Thales and later Eudoxus studied it, integrating Mesopotamian constellations with their own. The Egyptians too influenced Hellenistic star knowledge. The famous Library of Alexandria undoubtedly held records of Egyptian astronomical observations and myths that Greek scholars consulted. For instance, the Greeks identified the constellation of the Ram, which may have origins in Babylon's hired man, and wove it into their own legend of the Golden Fleece. Such cross-pollination meant that the legacy of the earliest sky stories would echo in many later cultures. Yet despite the spread and mingling of myths, the core experience remained wonderfully consistent. People everywhere looked up and found meaning in the stars. A Polynesian navigator in the Pacific might not have known anything about Orion or Osiris, but he had his own constellations, perhaps a fishhook shape for the demigod Maui, and his own stories guiding him over trackless oceans. A Mayan priest in Yucatan observed Venus with intense interest, not as Inanna, but as the incarnation of his own god, determining when wars or ceremonies should be held. In ancient China, court astronomers recorded the positions of the azure dragon and the white tiger constellations as part of their imperial astronomy, embedding them in Chinese legend. Meanwhile, Aboriginal peoples in Australia, among the world's oldest cultures, perceived constellations not just in the stars, but in the dark gaps of the Milky Way's glowing band, seeing emus and serpents shaped by the starry canvas, myths that may stretch back tens of thousands of years. As we reflect on the journey from unrecorded tales to written myths, we appreciate how vital these stories were to our ancestors. They devoted astonishing effort to them, be it carving massive stones aligned to star risings, or meticulously transcribing star lists onto clay and papyrus, or building entire temples as cosmic observatories. Why? Because in the movements of the heavens they sensed something profound: the rhythms of time, the whims of the divine, the fate of crops and kings, perhaps even hints of their own origins. By crafting narratives about the stars, they were bridging the human and the cosmic. The stories gave them a handle on the infinite, a way to bring the vast, unknowable sky into the circle of the campfire, into the realm of the familiar. The age of written myth that emerged did not diminish the magic of the stars. If anything, it magnified it. Poets and priests could embellish and elaborate on old tales, adding layers of meaning. Astronomers could calculate and predict star positions, yet often they did so to better align religious festivals or to cast horoscopes, blending science with myth. The sky became not just a canvas for stories, but also a textbook of theology and a calendar for society. Think of the zodiacs painted on temple ceilings in Dendera in late-period Egypt, where Greek and Egyptian constellations mingle in a grand wheel of the heavens. It is both art and almanac, myth and math intertwined. By writing down and formalizing star lore, ancient civilizations ensured that the night sky would have an honored place in the structure of their culture and knowledge. And so we stand at a threshold, with the stars firmly ensconced in written myth by the end of antiquity. We are about to enter a new era of stargazing, one where the likes of Greek heroes, Roman gods, and later navigators of the age of exploration all carry forward the torch of these first stories. The old patterns traced out by Sumerians and Egyptians will find new life in the legends of different lands. Pegasus, Perseus, Andromeda. Greek names will join the cosmic cast, riding on the backbone of earlier imaginations. But even as new stories are spun, the ancient ones remain visible, like the faint glow of stars behind a new constellation picture. Our journey under ancient skies has so far shown how humanity's earliest chapters with the stars set the stage for everything to come. We have moved from anonymous storytellers to named civilizations, from oral lore to cuneiform and hieroglyphs. As the curtain falls on this first act, the stage of heaven is crowded with familiar characters, bulls and lions, scorpions and hunters, goddesses and kings, all shimmering in their celestial roles. They will soon be joined by new characters as we continue our voyage. The night sky's oldest stories are not endings, but beginnings. They fade into the next age of myth-making, much as the morning stars fade into dawn, only to return after sunset. Ahead lies the world of classical constellations and beyond, where the legacy of what we've heard will blend with new tales. For now, we take a gentle pause, gazing one last time at the twinkling firmament that inspired the very first humans and the first writers alike. The stars above remain as they were, eternal, mysterious, beckoning. Our exploration of their legends will continue, guided by that same ancient awe. The cosmic story goes on, and we drift forward with it, into the next chapter of the tale written in the stars. For countless generations, people have looked up at the night sky and found stories glimmering among the stars. In ancient Greece, each constellation was more than just a pattern of lights. It was a beloved myth, a hero or monster frozen in the heavens. When dusk fell over the Aegean and the stars emerged one by one, storytellers would point upward and recount tales of valor, love, and tragedy. The Greeks believed the gods had placed these figures in the sky, creating a celestial tapestry of their most enduring legends. Even now, when we gaze at those same starry patterns, we are connecting with those age-old stories writ in the stars. To the Greek imagination, the night sky was like an eternal stage, where the greatest characters of myth played out their destinies over and over. Each twinkling star marked a scene or a character: a winged horse rearing up, a brave hero brandishing a sword, a queen seated on her throne. These were not random specks, but familiar friends. The heavenly imprint of their mythology spread across the cosmos. On clear evenings, families in ancient Athens or on the hills of Sparta might sit together under the dark dome of sky, tracing out shapes and recalling the adventures associated with them. In those moments, the boundary between Earth and Olympus felt thin, as if the tales of mortals and gods were unfolding just overhead in the glitter of constellations. In Greek lore, it was common for a mortal who had lived or died in a remarkable way to be set among the stars. This divine transformation was known as a katasterism, literally a placement among the stars. By Zeus's will, or a goddess's pity, heroes and monsters, lovers and loyal beasts could find a kind of immortality in the night sky. The heavens became a refuge and a reward. For example, after her trials on Earth, a gentle nymph named Callisto was placed into the sky as the Great Bear, the constellation we call Ursa Major. Her young son, Arcas, was also swept up to safety as the Little Bear, Ursa Minor. Each night, mother and son circle the north celestial pole, forever out of reach of the jealous goddess who had sought to harm them. This tender tale reminds us how the Greeks often saw compassion in the stars, a mother and child, reunited and safe in the heavens' care. Not all who shine above met gentle fates. Some constellations were born from tragedy or admonition. The vain Queen Cassiopeia, so the story goes, boasted that her beauty outshone even the sea nymphs, angering the god of the sea. As punishment, she was eventually set into the sky for eternity, tied to her throne. There she sits among the stars, a distinctive W-shaped figure that slowly turns upside down as the night passes. The ancients imagined that Cassiopeia sometimes hangs head down in humiliation, a reminder of the price of pride. Yet even in her eternal discomfort, she glitters elegantly, her story preserved as a lesson, silhouetted against the night. Every corner of the sky held some lesson or memory for the Greeks. High overhead, you might find Hercules, the great hero, depicted as a kneeling figure with a club in hand, catching his breath after completing his legendary labours. In another quarter lies Ophiuchus, a man entwined with a serpent, said to be Asclepius, the gifted healer, grasping a snake that taught him the secrets of life and death. Zeus set Asclepius among the stars as a healer's emblem, but also to prevent mortals from cheating death indefinitely. Thus, the heavens not only celebrated heroism, but also preserved divine laws and limits. Some constellations kept alive tales of love as well. Off the western horizon glimmers the faint shape of a harp, Lyra, the lyre of Orpheus. The Greeks whispered that after the tragic loss of his wife Eurydice, and then his own untimely death, the grieving musician Orpheus had his harp placed gently into the sky by Zeus. It glows softly, a tiny cluster of stars, carrying the echoes of Orpheus's music, so that the night breeze might still catch a hint of his sorrowful, beautiful song. For those who knew the tale, that small constellation was a token of love and of the enduring power of art, even in the silent void of space. For as many heroes honoured in the sky, there were also monsters shining as defeated foes or cautionary figures. A great dragon coils around the north celestial pole. Many believed it to be the very serpent that once guarded a golden apple tree in a far western garden, slain by a hero and then cast into the stars. Stretching across southern nights is a long, writhing water snake, evoking the hydra that Heracles vanquished, its countless heads now just faint stars glimmering in a twisting line. Even a magnificent ship sails among these starry figures. The Argo, the vessel of Jason and the Argonauts, set adrift forever in the heavens after its voyages were done. Thus the sky was not just a sanctuary for the virtuous, but a memorial for the conquered and the adventurous as well. A complete epic etched in constellations, with heroes and monsters, quests and treasures alike. All these characters, gods, mortals, creatures, were woven into a grand cosmic tapestry. In the Greek worldview, the sky was alive with meaning. As the seasons changed, different constellations would dominate the night, reminding people of different myths and morals. The appearance of certain stars at dusk or dawn might signal the time to harvest or to sail, but it also signaled the time to tell a particular story once again. In that way, Mythology and daily life were closely entwined, guided by the lights above. Of all these glittering stories, some stand out as especially beloved across the generations. Among them is a tale of a great hunter named Orion, whose figure dominates the winter night sky. The Greeks knew him as Orion, the most celebrated hunter in their mythic lore. His story is one of both pride and tragedy, love and vengeance, and in the cold, clear nights when his constellation rises high, one can almost imagine the scene playing out among the stars. Gaze up at Orion's unmistakable outline, and you might envision a broad-shouldered hero raising his club, accompanied by faithful dogs at his heels, forever pursuing a heavenly quarry. Let us follow this mighty hunter's story from its earthly origins to its final resting place among the constellations, as we continue our journey through the celestial legends of ancient Greece. Orion's tale begins in a time when gods still mingled freely with mortals and heroes roamed the earth. Born, it is said, of the sea god Poseidon and a mortal princess, Orion was a giant of a man, blessed with extraordinary strength and the ability to walk on water. With broad shoulders and unquenchable daring, he became the greatest hunter of his age. Orion could cross the seas to distant lands, striding over waves as though they were solid ground, all to seek out new forests teeming with game. In the cool dawn, or under the golden light of dusk, villagers would see the towering figure of Orion returning from the woods, a stag or lion draped across his shoulders, and know that none could rival his prowess in the hunt. For a time, Orion's skills earned him favor among the gods. The goddess of the hunt, Artemis, welcomed him as a companion on her moonlit expeditions. Together they stalked through shadowy groves, silent as predators, and Orion's keen eyes and swift arrows pleased Artemis greatly. Among mortals and immortals alike, Orion's bold spirit was admired. Around campfires, fellow hunters listened eagerly to his tales of chasing mighty boars and vanquishing wolves the size of horses. And on the whispering wind, it was even rumored that Artemis had come to cherish the mortal by her side, that a rare friendship, or perhaps even love, glowed between the goddess and her huntsman. But Orion, for all his talents, carried a seed of pride that would prove his undoing. Flush with confidence, he began to boast that no creature alive could escape him, that he would hunt every beast to the ends of the earth. He proclaimed that soon no wild animal would be left to threaten or challenge mankind. So thorough would his hunting be. This bold claim resounded across hills and valleys until it reached the ears of Gaia, the primordial earth goddess. Gaia, mother of all creatures, was angered by Orion's arrogance and his talk of exterminating her children of the wild. In her ancient wisdom, she decided to humble the boastful hunter. From the dark soil, Gaia summoned a monstrous scorpion with a carapace black as night and venom fierce enough to strike down the mightiest of heroes. One bright afternoon, as Orion traversed a lonely desert in search of lions to battle, Gaia's creature struck. Bursting forth from a crevice in the ground, the giant scorpion confronted Orion, pincers clacking and its stinger glistening with deadly poison. The hunter had never faced such a foe. He drew his sword and fought bravely, sand swirling around the duel of man and beast. Orion managed to chip the scorpion's hard shell, but the creature was relentless and quick. As Orion raised his club for a crushing blow, the scorpion's tail lashed over and struck a vicious sting into his heel. Pain like fire shot through Orion's body. He staggered, the strength draining from his limbs, and with a final cry, the great hunter fell. The scorpion skittered away into the rocks, victorious by Gaia's will, leaving Orion's body motionless beneath the bright sky. When Artemis learned of Orion's fate, she was heartbroken. Rushing to his side, The moon goddess found she was too late. Orion's life had already slipped away with the setting sun. Some stories say that Artemis wept silver tears that night, mourning the loss of her fearless companion. Even Apollo, despite his jealousy, was struck with remorse at the sight of the fallen hunter, realizing that Orion's death was not a fitting end for one so bold. The gods agreed that Orion's deeds and bravery should be honored rather than lost to oblivion, and so, by Zeus's decree, Orion was lifted from the earth and gently placed among the stars. Artemis took care to set the figure of her friend in a proud stance in the night sky, sword at his belt, club raised high, forever in a pose of vigilance and valor. The great scorpion that felled Orion did not escape divine notice either. For carrying out Gaia's bidding, it too was given a place in the heavens as the constellation Scorpio. Yet, mindful of Orion's suffering, Zeus ensured that the scorpion and the hunter would never trouble one another again. In the vast dome of the sky, they are kept apart on opposite sides. When the scorpion rises in the east, Orion is already slipping below the western horizon, as if the giant still flees from his relentless pursuer. And when Orion climbs anew each season, glittering in the winter nights, the scorpion has long set. The two enemies never share the sky at the same time, locked in an eternal dance of chase and retreat, forever out of each other's reach. Thus, the constellation of Orion came to gleam high in the firmament, one of the most splendid sights of the night. On crisp winter evenings, when the air is clear and still, Orion strides across the southern sky, unmistakable in his grandeur. 3 bright stars in a row form his belt, the fastening of his tunic, and they shine like 3 gems on black velvet. From that belt hang his sword and scabbard, marked by a faint cluster of stars and a misty glow that the Greeks imagined as his jeweled weapon. Above the belt, at Orion's shoulder, a star of ruddy orange hue flickers, the glow of a giant's right shoulder, smouldering like an ember. Opposite it, another bright star marks his left knee, cold and blue-white as ice. With a little imagination one sees the outline of a mighty man, feet planted apart, one arm brandishing a club, the other holding aloft a lion's pelt or shield to ward off an oncoming foe. Orion's whole figure is frozen in an eternal hunting stance, braced against the darkness. In front of Orion charges the great bull Taurus. The hunter's body is turned toward this celestial beast, as if challenging it head-on. Some say this skyward confrontation recalls one of Orion's earthly hunts, perhaps a clash with a ferocious bull that tested his strength. Forever in the heavens, Orion faces this foe unflinching, a reminder of the courage that defined his mortal days. Not far from the bull twinkles a tiny swarm of lights, the Pleiades, 7 sisters who eternally flee Orion's pursuit. In life, Orion once glimpsed these enchanting sisters dancing in a forest clearing and gave chase, captivated by their beauty. The young women cried out to the gods for rescue, and Zeus transformed them into stars to spare them from Orion's ardor. Now they cluster together in the sky, 7 pale blue jewels in Taurus's shoulder. Still, Orion follows. Each night he rises, trailing behind the Pleiades as they slip westward, always just beyond his grasp. It is an eternal chase written in starlight. The hunter, bold and enamored, forever pursuing and forever denied. Beside Orion, 2 faithful companions accompany him on his stellar hunt. Just below and behind the great hunter shines Sirius, the dog star, which the Greeks imagined as Orion's chief hound. Sirius is the brightest star in the entire night sky, a beacon that flickers fiercely on winter nights. They pictured Orion's loyal dog bounding at his heel, tirelessly following his master through every adventure, earthly or celestial. Slightly ahead of Orion, trots a smaller dog marked by another bright star, later called Procyon. With Orion flanked by his great and little dogs, what we know as Canis Major and Canis Minor, the storytellers of old saw a complete hunting party illuminated above. At Orion's feet, they even placed a timid hare, the constellation Lepus, forever crouching near the hunter's boots and hoping not to be noticed by the dog's keen eyes. The sky became a cosmic hunting ground. Orion and his dogs chasing the fleeing hare and challenging the mighty bull, while above them the seven sisters dance away and the scorpion waits its turn below the horizon. To the people of ancient Greece, the rising of Orion signaled the arrival of long, dark winter nights, and with them, the retelling of his cautionary tale. His glittering form reminded them of the perils of pride and the mercy of the gods. Parents would point out Orion to their children and recount how even the mightiest hero could fall, but also how compassion from Olympus ensured he was never forgotten. Orion's presence in the sky was both a comfort and a lesson. A comfort because his heroic light kept watch on cold nights, and a lesson in humility before the forces of nature and the will of the gods. Sailors, too, navigating by the stars, knew Orion well. By the alignment of his belt, they could find their bearings on the open sea, all the while remembering that even a giant's boast was humbled by a small creature at the god's command. In Orion's sparkle, they found both guidance and a gentle warning. And so, as stories of Orion were shared by hearthlight or on the decks of ships, the great hunter's constellation stood vigil above, a shining reminder that pride invites retribution, but valor and memory can win a kind of immortality among the stars. As we leave Orion on his eternal trek across the heavens, our eyes drift toward another quarter of the night sky. There, a different saga unfolds, one of perilous beasts and the bravery of a hero who comes to save an innocent. Not far from Orion's glittering dominion lies a cluster of constellations, forever linked in a single tale. The story of a proud queen, her doomed daughter, and a valiant hero who intervenes. It is the tale of Perseus and Andromeda, a celestial drama of vanity, sacrifice, and rescue that spans multiple constellations at once. Like Orion's legend, it has been shining above us for thousands of years, waiting for us to look up and remember its ancient plot. In the far reaches of the sky, a cluster of stars tells a tale of royal pride, mortal peril, and heroic salvation. It begins with Queen Cassiopeia of Ethiopia, a woman renowned for her beauty and infamous for her vanity. One clear night, beneath a canopy of stars reflected in the calm sea, Cassiopeia boasted that she herself, or her daughter, Princess Andromeda, in some tellings, was more beautiful than the Nereids, the graceful sea nymphs who dance in Poseidon's waters. This prideful claim, uttered in arrogance and carried by the breeze to the god's ears, so enraged Poseidon, lord of the sea, that he resolved to teach the queen a lesson. From the depths, he summoned a great sea serpent, a creature so colossal that its thrashing tail raised storms and its breath churned the shoreline to froth. This monster, known as Cetus, began to ravage Cassiopeia's coastal realm, devouring fishermen's boats, flooding villages with tidal waves, and striking fear into every heart along the Ethiopian shore. King Cepheus, Cassiopeia's husband, was desperate to save his people from Poseidon's wrath. But no spear or army could halt a beast born of the sea god's fury. In despair, the king and queen consulted the oracle of Ammon, hoping for divine guidance. the oracle's pronouncement fell like a death sentence. To appease Poseidon and end the devastation, the kingdom must sacrifice its princess, Andromeda, to the monster. Cassiopeia and Cepheus were devastated. Andromeda was their only child, gentle and beloved, innocent of any wrongdoing. How could they give up their daughter? Yet the signs of Poseidon's anger grew worse each day. Crops withered under salty spray, towns lay in ruins. Finally, with heavy hearts and trembling hands, the king and queen agreed to the terrible bargain to save their land. On a sombre afternoon, as the sun cast long shadows on the craggy seaside cliffs, Andromeda was led to a great rock at the water's edge. The princess wore a flowing white gown that fluttered in the sea breeze like a lonely flag of surrender. Though her eyes brimmed with tears, those who escorted her saw that she remained composed, even courageous, accepting her fate to save her people. Chains of bronze were fastened around her wrists, securing her to the jagged rock. With a final, sorrowful kiss on her forehead, King Cepheus turned away, unable to watch what was to come. As twilight fell, Andromeda stood alone against the darkening sky and churning sea, her figure small and fragile on the vast shore, waiting as a living offering to the beast from the deep. Night came, and with it a dreadful silence broken only by distant waves. Stars glittered overhead, indifferent witnesses to the unfolding drama. Andromeda shivered in the cold breeze, her heart pounding like a drum. She scanned the horizon anxiously. Each swell of black water made her imagine the serpentine back of Cetus sliding beneath. The moon was just rising, casting a silver path on the waters, when the surface of the sea began to roil and bulge. With a roar that shook the very stars, the sea monster burst through the waves. Cetus was immense. Its scaled hide glistened wet and dark. Its jaws were lined with teeth like swords, and each undulation of its coils sent torrents crashing against the rocks. It spotted the lone figure of Andromeda and let out a shrieking hiss. Pleased, it seemed, that its prey had been conveniently offered up by the very people it terrorized. As the monster surged toward the shore, hope seemed lost for the helpless princess. But the heavens had other plans that night. High above, across the cloud-streaked sky, a hero was racing on winged sandals. Perseus, the son of Zeus, and the mortal Danae, was returning home from a great quest. He had recently slain the Gorgon Medusa, the fearsome creature with snakes for hair, whose gaze could turn any living thing to stone. Armed with gifts from the gods, a mirrored shield from Athena, a sword from Zeus, and winged sandals from Hermes, Perseus was soaring across the world. On his journey back, he happened to pass over the coastline of Cepheus's kingdom at that crucial moment. From the sky, Perseus glimpsed something astounding by moonlight. A young woman chained to a rock, and looming out of the sea, a dragon-like leviathan poised to devour her. Perseus's heart leapt at the sight of Andromeda's plight. Without hesitation he swooped down, wind whistling past him, and alighted between the princess and the oncoming monster. Drawing his sword, he called out over the thunder of the surf, promising Andromeda that she would not be harmed. The princess, scarcely believing her eyes, watched this stranger stand before her like a saviour out of a dream. In that instant, Perseus too was struck by Andromeda's beauty and by her bravery in the face of doom, and he silently vowed to save her at all costs. Cetus lunged toward the shore, its massive jaws gaping to swallow hero and victim in a single gulp. Perseus sprang into the air with the aid of his enchanted sandals, evading the monster's strike. He darted around the creature's scaly head, slashing with his sword, but the beast's armoured hide was nearly impenetrable, and the fury of the seawater made each approach perilous. A heavy sweep of its tail nearly knocked Perseus from the sky, and salt spray stung his eyes as he fought. Realizing brute force alone might not prevail, Perseus thought of the dreadful trophy he carried from his earlier quest. Reaching into the leather satchel at his side, he withdrew the severed head of Medusa, careful to avert his own gaze, and held it high toward the advancing beast. The eyes of the Gorgon, though lifeless, still held their terrible power. In the next flash of lightning, the monster Cetus found itself face to face with the snaky-haired visage of Medusa. Instantly, the curse of the Gorgon took hold. The sea serpent's furious expression froze, its body stiffened mid-coil. A crashing wave enveloped its form, and when the water drained back to the sea, Cetus had turned entirely to stone. The once suppling terror was now nothing more than a jagged reef jutting from the shallow waters. Perseus had triumphed, not by strength alone, but with clever use of the tools at his disposal and a brave heart guided by compassion. With the beast defeated, Perseus rushed to Andromeda's side. Using his sword, he carefully shattered the chains that bound her wrists. The princess nearly collapsed, overcome by relief and the ebbing rush of fear. But Perseus caught her in his arms. For a moment she gazed up at her saviour's face, his wind-tangled hair and noble countenance lit by the gentle glow of the rising moon. Gratitude and admiration shone in Andromeda's eyes. Cepheus and Cassiopeia, having witnessed the miraculous turn of events from the cliffs above, now hurried down to the shore with their attendants. They embraced their daughter, weeping with joy and profound relief, and thanked Perseus with all their hearts. The king, in his gratitude, offered Perseus any reward he wished. Perseus gently asked for Andromeda's hand in marriage, for he had fallen deeply in love with the brave, kind princess. Cassiopeia and Cepheus readily agreed, overjoyed to unite their daughter with the valiant hero who had saved her life. In the days that followed, the kingdom rejoiced. The threat hanging over Ethiopia had vanished with the petrification of Cetus. Andromeda was safe, and a grand wedding celebration was planned. Bright pennants fluttered from the palace walls, music and laughter returned to the harbours, and the tale of Perseus's daring rescue was told in every corner of the land. Andromeda and Perseus were married under a starry sky with gentle waves lapping at the shore, a fitting reminder that the sea, once a source of dread, had been tamed by Perseus's courage. Even the gods on Olympus were said to have paused to watch the festivities, pleased that love and bravery had restored harmony where vanity and wrath once caused turmoil. Yet the story of Perseus and Andromeda does not end with their wedding, for the gods had one more gift in store. As years passed, and the mortal lives of these figures drew to a close, the gods decided that such a tale should be remembered for all time. One by one, each character was immortalized in the night sky as a constellation, their stories bound together in the stars. Athena, who had guided Perseus in his quest, was said to have been instrumental in this celestial honor. Perseus himself was set among the stars, grasping his sword and the head of Medusa as eternal symbols of his bravery. If you look carefully on a clear night, you can find Perseus's constellation sweeping across the heavens. One of the stars in Perseus is unlike the others. It dims and brightens periodically, which the ancients imagined as the blinking eye of Medusa's severed head clutched in Perseus's hand, a last remnant of the terror he conquered. Nearby, the Princess Andromeda shines among the stars as well. Her constellation stretches gracefully across the sky, forming the figure of a maiden with arms outstretched. Long strands of stars can be traced like the chains that once held her. but here in the heavens they bind her no more. Instead, Andromeda appears to float free in the night, a vision of innocence and sacrifice rewarded. Later, astronomers noted a smudge of light within Andromeda's boundaries, the faint glow of a distant galaxy, but the Greeks did not know its nature. Perhaps they saw it as a soft cloud or a wisp of milk from Hera's breast. We might imagine it now as a gentle reminder of the boundless universe beyond, one that the freed Andromeda could wander eternally without fear. Above Andromeda sits her mother, Cassiopeia, the proud queen, placed upon a throne of stars. Cassiopeia's constellation forms a distinct W shape, 5 bright stars zigzagging across the sky, which ancient sky watchers likened to the outline of a seated queen. Because Cassiopeia was both honoured and punished in her stellar fate, her constellation circles the North Star continuously. There are times each night when the wheel of the sky turns Cassiopeia upside down, as if the vain queen were being tumbled from her throne to atone for her vanity. Yet at other times she sits upright, sparkling regally, a queen nonetheless. Across from Cassiopeia is the constellation Cepheus, her husband the king. Cepheus's stars are fainter, forming a simple house-like shape, or a stick figure of a king with a pointed crown. The ancients included him in the story in the sky, so that he, too, would watch over their daughter and his contrite wife from his own stellar seat. High above the scene, one can spot the great square of Pegasus, the winged horse. This magical steed was born from the blood of Medusa at the moment Perseus slew the Gorgon. Though Perseus did not ride Pegasus in the oldest versions of the tale, having instead flown with Hermes' sandals, the winged horse became associated with the hero's journey in later tellings. In the sky, Pegasus leaps forward, outlined by stars that sketch his mighty wings and body. The Greeks saw Pegasus as a symbol of poetic inspiration and the soaring nature of heroic adventure. They imagined that Pegasus carried thunderbolts for Zeus, or that he served the muses by pounding his hoof to create the spring of Hippocrene, inspiring creativity whenever he took flight. But most of all, Pegasus in this context reminded them of Perseus's saga and its fantastical elements. The presence of the winged horse among the constellations lent an air of wonder to this heavenly tableau. And what of the fearsome monster, Cetus, that nearly destroyed the kingdom? It too was set among the stars, albeit far to the south of the others, sprawling faintly in a part of the sky often called the Celestial Sea. The constellation Cetus became known more as the Whale in later times, but the Greeks knew it as the sea beast sent by Poseidon. Its stars outline a huge but dim shape that lurks low above the horizon for those in Greece's latitude. When it does appear, one can remember how a terror was turned to stone and then hung in the sky as a lesson. Cetus's presence in the heavens is a subtle reminder that even the agents of chaos have their place in the grand design, and that the memory of dreadful challenges lives on alongside the heroes who overcame them. Together, these constellations, Perseus, Andromeda, Cassiopeia, Cepheus, Pegasus, and Cetus, form a celestial tableau, a cosmic storybook spread open across the night. On crisp autumn evenings in the northern hemisphere, when the stars shine brightest, one can trace this entire saga overhead. Cassiopeia's glittering W hovers high. Andromeda's chain of stars extends from her mother's throne, and Perseus stands nearby, as if rushing in from the wings of the cosmic stage. The great square of Pegasus provides a platform for our imagination to soar, and low near the horizon, the faint stars of Cetus whisper of dangers that have passed. Ancient storytellers would sweep their arms across that portion of the sky, connecting the sparkling dots for their listeners, and bring to life the drama of a queen's hubris and a hero's devotion. And as the story ended, with all the characters safely immortalized in the vault of heaven, those listening could look up and see that indeed the gods had woven a happy resolution into the very fabric of the night. The legend of Perseus and Andromeda, preserved in these constellations, taught lessons about humility, courage, and the bonds of family and love. Parents would warn their children, when pointing out Cassiopeia, not to boast as she did. Young women, gazing at Andromeda's stars, might take heart that even in the darkest times, hope and help can arrive unexpectedly. And everyone, seeing Perseus glimmer on the horizon, could feel a spark of inspiration, knowing that bravery and quick wits can overcome even the most terrifying of monsters. The night sky, with this legendary rescue shining among its stars, became a source of both entertainment and wisdom. Each retelling around the fire, under those constellations, reinforced a shared cultural memory, that the heavens watched over the just and the brave, and that even our human stories could be written among the stars. Having explored this royal saga and its miraculous outcome, we turn our gaze to another wondrous pattern in the sky, one that spans the whole dome of night from east to west. Beyond the personal stories of heroes and monsters, the ancient Greeks, and indeed many other peoples, recognized a circular path traced by 12 constellations. These formed the zodiac, the circle of animals and figures that the sun, moon, and planets journey through over the course of each year. In these constellations, the Greeks found reflections of yet more myths, from a golden ram and a fierce lion to twin brothers and a pair of fish bound together. Each sign of the zodiac carried a legend of its own, adding another layer to the tapestry of the night. Let us now gently wander through this zodiac wheel and listen to the stories the Greeks told about each of these heavenly signs, forever shining above as reminders of adventure, sacrifice, and transformation. First among them is Aries, the ram. Its stars, though not the brightest, held great significance as the herald of spring. The Greeks saw in Aries the golden ram of legend, a magical creature with a fleece of pure gold. The story goes that this ram was sent by the cloud nymph Nephele to rescue her children, Phrixus and Helle, from a wicked stepmother's plot. Summoned by a mother's prayer, the golden ram appeared and took the children upon its back. It flew like the wind over land and sea, its woolly fleece glinting in the sunlight. Tragically, as they crossed a narrow strait, young Helle lost her grip and fell into the waters far below. Thereafter, that sea was called Hellespont in her memory. Phrixus, the surviving son, safely reached the distant land of Colchis on the far shore. In gratitude for the ram's salvation, Phrixus gently sacrificed the creature to Zeus, as was the custom, and hung its glittering golden fleece in a sacred grove guarded by a dragon. Years later, this miraculous golden fleece would become the prize sought by Jason and the Argonauts on their epic voyage, linking Ares' tale to yet another legendary saga. The gods, moved by the ram's noble deed and ultimate sacrifice, placed its image in the stars as Ares. Each spring, when the constellation Aries rose at dusk, the Greeks remembered the tale of deliverance and the promise of new beginnings, marked by the first point of Aries in the heavens. Following Aries comes Taurus, the mighty bull. On crisp spring evenings, the constellation Taurus looms large, a V-shaped cluster of stars sketching the bull's face and long horns. To the Greeks, Taurus symbolized both power and enchantment. One tale links Taurus to the Cretan bull, a magnificent white bull sent by Poseidon to the island of Crete. This divine bull was meant as a sign of the god's favor to King Minos, but when Minos refused to sacrifice it as promised, Poseidon grew wrathful. The bull went mad and rampaged across the land until the hero Heracles subdued it as one of his great labors. Later, the bull met its end at the hands of Prince Theseus of Athens, who vanquished it on the plain of Marathon. In honor of these events, Zeus set the bull's likeness in the sky as Taurus, a tribute to the strength of the beast and to the heroes who faced it. Another legend whispers that Taurus was the guise adopted by Zeus himself when he sought to woo the Phoenician princess Europa. Taking the form of a gentle snow-white bull, Zeus charmed the princess and then carried her across the sea on his back to the island of Crete. The memory of that fantastical voyage lives on among the stars of Taurus as well. Whenever the bull constellation rose, shining prominently with the reddish star Aldebaran as its glowing eye, the Greeks recalled these tales, whether of Heracles wrestling a rampaging bull or a god ferrying a maiden over the waves. In Taurus, they saw a celestial emblem of strength, passion, and transformation. Next on the zodiac wheel are the bright stars of Gemini, the twins. Two stellar lights of nearly equal brightness stand side by side in the sky, representing the divine brothers Castor and Pollux. In Greek myth, Castor and Pollux, together known as the Dioscuri, were the sons of Leda, queen of Sparta, but they had two different fathers. Castor was born to King Tyndareus, a mortal, while Pollux was the son of Zeus, who had visited Leda in disguise. Thus Castor was mortal and Pollux immortal, yet the twins were inseparable in their love for each other. They embarked on many adventures together, sailing with Jason as Argonauts, taming wild horses, and famously rescuing their sister Helen from abduction. One fateful day, Castor, the mortal brother, was slain during a quarrel with a rival. Pollux was heartbroken, unable to bear living without his twin. In grief, Pollux beseeched Zeus either to restore Castor's life or to take his own so they could remain together. Zeus, moved by their unshakable bond, offered a compassionate solution. Pollux could share his immortality with Castor. From that moment on, the two brothers spent alternating days, one day in the light of Olympus, the next in the darkness of Hades, never truly parted, even in death. To honor their brotherly devotion, Zeus placed the twins among the stars as the constellation Gemini. The two brightest stars of Gemini still bear their names. When sailors saw those twin stars shining calmly above the horizon, they prayed to Castor and Pollux for protection, believing the brothers would guide them through storms. And for all who looked up, Gemini stood as a twinkling testament to loyalty and selfless love between brothers. The fourth sign of the zodiac is Cancer, the crab, a smaller, faint constellation with a tail tied to a mighty hero. Its story emerges from the saga of Heracles and his 12 labors. During the hero's battle with the multi-headed Hydra, Hera, queen of the gods and foe to Heracles, sought to hinder the hero. Determined to see Heracles fail, Hera dispatched a giant crab named Carcinus to come to the Hydra's aid. Scuttling out from the swamp's edge, the crab latched onto Heracles' foot with its pincers in the thick of combat. For a moment, the sudden pain made Heracles falter, but the demigod's strength was immense. In annoyance, he stomped down and crushed the crab beneath his heel, ending its intervention almost as soon as it began. The Hydra was soon vanquished despite the distraction. Hera, though her ploy with the crab failed, still chose to honor the creature's obedience. She placed the likeness of the crab among the stars as the constellation Cancer. Because Carcinus had been only a minor player and was swiftly squashed, its stars are not bright. Indeed, Cancer is one of the faintest zodiac constellations. Nevertheless, the appearance of Cancer in early summer reminded the Greeks of this curious footnote in Heracles' legend. It served as a gentle celestial reminder that even a humble creature could find a place in the heavens for its small act of courage in serving a goddess. Majestic Leo, the lion, follows next, dominating the summer sky. Leo's constellation, with its sickle-shaped curve of stars outlining the lion's mane, evoked one of the most famous beasts in Greek lore, the Nemean lion. This ferocious creature roamed the hills of Nemea, preying on livestock and people, and it was said that its fur was so thick that no arrow or spear could pierce it. As the first of his 12 labors, Heracles was commanded to slay this supposedly invincible lion. The hero ventured into the Nemean woods to confront the beast. He soon discovered, to his frustration, that his arrows bounced harmlessly off the lion's hide. When the lion retreated into a two-mouthed cave, Heracles blocked one of its exits and entered through the other, determined to face the creature in its dark lair. In the blackness of the cave, a vicious struggle ensued. Relying on his prodigious strength, Heracles managed to seize the lion and, after a mighty wrestling contest, strangled it with his bare hands. Victorious, the hero emerged carrying the lion's heavy carcass on his shoulders. He would later wear the lion's impenetrable pelt as armor, draping the fearsome head over his own like a helmet. Zeus, or some say Hera, in grudging respect for the lion's might, lifted the image of the Nemean lion into the sky to become the constellation Leo. When Leo rose in late summer, its bright star Regulus leading the way, the Greeks remembered the courage of Heracles and the strength of the beast he had overcome. In Leo's stars, they saw a symbol of bravery and of royal power, for the lion was considered kingly, and the reassurance that even the fiercest challenge could be conquered. After the lion comes Virgo, the maiden, gracing the early autumn nights. Virgo is one of the largest zodiac constellations, a sprawling figure that the Greeks envisioned as a winged maiden or a goddess holding an ear of grain. There were various ideas about who this maiden represented. Some Greeks believed she was Persephone, the gentle daughter of Demeter, whose annual descent into the underworld brought an end to summer's bounty. Others imagined she might be Demeter herself, the harvest goddess, sorrowfully holding a sheaf of wheat as she awaited her daughter's return each spring. But one beloved interpretation held that she was Astrea, the goddess of justice and innocence. Astrea was said to be the last of the immortals to live among humans during the mythic Golden Age. In that long-ago age, people knew no war or want, and the gods walked openly among them. As the ages passed, and humankind became more corrupt, one by one the divine beings withdrew to their celestial abodes. Gentle Astrea stayed longer than any other deity, hoping to guide and redeem humanity. But eventually, even her pure heart grew weary of human folly and bloodshed. In sorrow, she departed the earth and ascended to the heavens, leaving mankind to its own devices. Zeus placed her among the stars as Virgo. When Greeks beheld Virgo glittering high in the sky, they remembered that mythic time when the world was young and innocent, and they held on to the hope that such virtue might one day return. The bright star speaker in Virgo's hand, shining like a grain of wheat, reminded farmers to plant and harvest with fairness, and to honor the seasons and the gods who preside over them. Hanging in the sky next to Virgo is Libra, the scales. Libra is unique among the zodiac signs in that it represents not a living creature, but an object, a pair of balancing scales. In Greek lore, these scales were associated directly with Astrea, the maiden of Virgo. The story went that when Astrea left the earth, she set her scales of justice in the sky beside her to forever weigh the deeds of humankind from afar. Each year, around the time the sun moved into Libra at the autumnal equinox, days and nights were of nearly equal length. Nature itself was in balance. The Greeks saw this celestial balance as a fitting symbol of fairness and harmony. Some also linked Libra to Themis, the divine embodiment of law and order and mother of Astrea, or to Zeus's daughter Dike, another goddess of justice who carried scales. Alternatively, a few stories identified the scales as the instrument of Tyche, the fickle goddess of fortune, though the scales of fate were not as well known as the scales of justice. In any case, the most common tale was that Libra carried on Astrea's legacy of judgment. The constellation itself is faint, with only a few modest stars forming its outline, so a dark, clear night was needed to discern Libra's form. Still, when Greeks glimpsed Libra's stars overhead, they were reminded of the importance of balance, equity, and truth. Under Libra's gentle glow, they were assured that in the grand cosmic order, at least for a moment, all things found their proper equilibrium. As the nights deepen in late autumn, a glowing scorpion creeps into view. Scorpio, the scorpion, 8th sign of the zodiac. Its array of stars curls like a scorpion's hooked tail, with a red star, Antares, beating at its heart like a warning signal. The Greeks connected this fearsome constellation to the tale of Orion the hunter. Long ago, as we have seen, Orion boasted that no beast could ever defeat him, and that he would hunt down every animal on earth. To check Orion's arrogance, Gaia sent forth a giant scorpion. In the dark of night, the scorpion and the hunter met, and Orion succumbed to the creature's venomous sting. Afterward, both Orion and the scorpion were placed among the stars on opposite sides of the sky. Thus Scorpio came to represent not just any scorpion, but the very one that felled a mighty hero. The Greeks noted how Scorpio and Orion never appear in the sky together. When the scorpion rises, Orion hastens to set, as if still fleeing its deadly sting, and when Orion stands tall in winter, Scorpio is hidden on the far side of the world, awaiting its turn. In summer, when Scorpio's tail and stinger sparkle high in the south, people retold the cautionary tale of Orion's hubris and downfall. They respected the power and danger symbolized by Scorpio, a tiny creature capable of toppling the proud, and perhaps they took the lesson to heart under those warm stars, each glance at Scorpio's crimson heart, reminding them to be humble. Trailing after the scorpion is Sagittarius, the archer, depicted as a creature half man, half horse, drawing a bow. On clear summer nights, you can find Sagittarius low on the southern horizon, aiming its arrow toward the heart of the rising scorpion, as if standing guard. The identity of this celestial archer was a topic of some debate among storytellers. Many said it was the wise centaur Chiron, famed tutor of heroes like Achilles and Asclepius, who was placed among the stars in this form. Chiron's own story is bittersweet. Accidentally wounded by a poisoned arrow, the immortal centaur suffered unbearable pain. He willingly gave up his immortality to escape his agony, a sacrifice that moved Zeus to set him in the sky, where Chiron could shine forever without pain, continuing to guide and teach from above. Others, however, told that Sagittarius was a satyr named Crotus, a son of Pan. Crotus lived among the Muses on Mount Helicon, and was said to have invented the hunting bow. The Muses so loved his skill and enthusiastic devotion. He would cheer for their songs and ride swiftly in the hunt, that they asked Zeus to honor him. Zeus consented, and Crotus was placed among the stars as the archer Sagittarius. Whichever legend one preferred, a Greek stargazer looking at Sagittarius saw the figure of a mounted archer eternally poised. They imagined the arrow of Sagittarius drawn and pointing towards Scorpio, as if to protect the heavens from that stinging beast. In this way, even the constellations seemed to share a connected drama. Orion and Scorpio engaged in their chase, and Sagittarius intervening with bow at the ready. Farther along the zodiac path arrives Capricorn, the sea-goat, perhaps the strangest creature in the celestial menagerie. Capricorn's stars form a faint, narrow triangle, which the Greeks likened to the head of a goat with the tail of a fish. The myth behind this hybrid goes back to the wars between the gods and the giants. When the monstrous Typhon, a towering, fire-breathing foe whom even the Olympians feared, attacked, the god Pan found himself in peril. To escape Typhon's onslaught, Pan leapt into the river Nile and was transformed into a creature half goat and half fish. In this half-changed form, Pan managed to elude the rampaging monster. After the gods regrouped and eventually defeated Typhon, Zeus commemorated Pan's quick thinking by placing the goatfish among the stars as Capricorn. There is also a kinder tale told of a nurturing goat, Amalthea, who nursed the infant Zeus in a mountain cave. In gratitude, Zeus honored his foster mother by setting her image in the sky. In either case, the Greeks saw Capricorn as a reminder of both the absurd and the generous in their mythology. When the dim stars of Capricorn appeared in late winter, shepherds and farmers knew the rainy season was at hand. They would retell Pan's comic yet heroic escape and smile at the oddity of a goat with a fishtail, yet also recognize in Capricorn the virtues of resilience and ingenuity. After all, this constellation signified that wit and adaptability, even in bizarre forms, could help one survive great trials. Next pours forth the story of Aquarius, the water-bearer. The constellation. Aquarius is a broad, diffuse sprinkling of stars that the Greeks envisioned as a figure tipping a jug, pouring water eternally. The myth most often attached to Aquarius was that of Ganymede, a beautiful youth from the mortal world. Ganymede was a prince of Troy, famed for his exceptional beauty and gentle spirit. While tending his father's flocks on the slopes of Mount Ida, Ganymede caught the eye of Zeus. The king of the gods decided that this boy deserved a place among the immortals. Zeus transformed himself into a great eagle and swept down upon the unsuspecting prince. In mighty talons, the eagle lifted Ganymede off the earth and carried him up to the heavens. There, on Olympus, Zeus made Ganymede the cupbearer to the gods, an honored role serving nectar and ambrosia at divine feasts. He also cherished Ganymede and granted him eternal youth. Subsequently, Zeus placed the image of Ganymede among the stars as Aquarius, the youth forever pouring water from a jug. Beside him glitters Aquila, the eagle, memorializing the form Zeus took on that day of the abduction. During the wet months, when Aquarius is prominent in the sky, nourishing rains would fall. People would say that Ganymede was dutifully pouring out the waters of heaven onto the world below. His story shining above symbolized service and the hope of divine favor, a mortal raised to the heavens, forever young and generous with life-giving water. Finally, completing the zodiac circle, we come to Pisces, the fishes. In the late winter sky, two faint groups of stars, connected by a slender line, represent two fish swimming in tandem. Their story in Greek mythology is one of escape and familial love. It takes place during that same tumultuous time when the monster Typhon rampaged against the gods. As Typhon approached, wreaking chaos, the goddess Aphrodite found herself in the wilds of Syria with her young son Eros. To avoid the monster's clutches, Aphrodite and Eros swiftly transformed themselves into fishes and dove into a river. Some say it was the Euphrates. To make sure they would not lose one another in the dark currents, mother and son tied themselves together with a cord. Typhon roared past, never noticing the two fishes gliding beneath the water's surface. After the danger had passed and the Olympians triumphed, Zeus rewarded this act of cleverness, and in some versions honoured the two helpful river fish who ferried Aphrodite and Eros to safety by placing the fishes among the stars. Thus, the constellation Pisces shows two fish forever bound together by a starry cord. When spring was near and Pisces appeared in the evening sky, the Greeks would recount how love and ingenuity, embodied by a goddess and her child, outwitted even the mightiest of threats. The gentle glimmer of Pisces in the darkness reminded them that fear can be overcome and that the bonds of family endure. Two souls, tied together, swimming through life's uncertain waters. With Pisces, the great zodiac circle returns to its beginning, and the cycle of constellations continues on and on. Through Aries and Taurus, Gemini and Cancer, Leo and Virgo, Libra and Scorpio, Sagittarius and Capricorn, Aquarius and Pisces, the ancients saw a reflection of their world and their values projected onto the cosmos. Each sign carried meaning: bravery, devotion, caution against pride, justice, adaptability, and love. To the observant Greek, the sky was a mirror of the human world. Some believed that the positions of the sun, moon, and wandering planets in these signs could subtly influence events on Earth and even impart certain qualities to those born under them. Thus, the zodiac became not only a celestial calendar and storybook, but also a cosmic guide to fate and character. By weaving their myths into this ring of constellations, the Greeks ensured that on any night of the year, some story was glittering above to teach or inspire. When one constellation set, another rose, as if the torch of storytelling were passed from one figure to the next. Lying beneath the summer stars, one might hear of a lion and a maiden, in winter, of a scorpion and a sea-goat. The night sky became a living anthology of legends, reminding those below of the capriciousness of gods, the heroism of mortals, and even the contributions of humble creatures. As our journey through the Greek constellations comes to a close, we find ourselves surrounded by familiar figures shining down, each with a tale we now know. But the tapestry of the night is far broader than the Greek imagination alone. Beyond the classical constellations and the zodiac's band, other cultures around the world looked up at these same stars and saw entirely different pictures and dramas unfolding. The cosmic campfire of the sky was shared by all peoples, and they too added their own constellations and stories: great bears and ravenous wolves, clever spiders and celestial hunters, beloved ancestors and guiding spirits. Our voyage continues as we leave the well-trodden paths of Greek star lore and venture outward to discover the stories that the rest of the world has written in the stars above. The desert night unfolds above ancient Egypt, calm and eternal. Stars shimmer over the dark silhouette of the Nile, their reflections dancing softly in the water. In this warm, silent darkness, the ancient Egyptians felt the presence of their gods overhead. They imagined the sky itself as a goddess, Nut, her body arching above the earth, adorned with thousands of shining stars. Each evening, Nut was said to swallow the fiery sun, and each dawn she gave birth to it again. A cycle of death and rebirth played out in the heavens. And as the people gazed upward, they saw that Nut's star-studded form was like a great cosmic canvas upon which their most sacred stories were drawn. To those ancient stargazers, some stars were not mere points of light, but divine souls. In the belt of Orion, 3 bright stars glinted in a row, like jewels on a celestial crown. Egyptians knew this pattern as Sa, and in its shimmering figure they saw Osiris, lord of the underworld and rebirth. Nearby, the dazzling star Sirius, which they called Sopdet, was Osiris's beloved wife, the goddess Isis. Each year, Sirius vanished for weeks, only to reappear just before dawn at summer's height. Its return heralded the life-giving flood of the Nile and marked the beginning of a new year. Night after night, priests and farmers alike watched for that first glitter of Sirius at dawn, and when it finally appeared, they rejoiced. Its rising was celebrated in a festival called the Coming of Sopdet, welcoming the new year and the waters to come. Imagine a clear pre-dawn in ancient Thebes. A high priest stands atop a temple pylon, peering east with quiet anticipation. Below him, the city sleeps in cool darkness, except for a few villagers by the riverbank, also watching the horizon. They all wait for a single star. Then, just as the sky begins to pale, a radiant spark, Sirius, pierces the glow of dawn. A joyous cry rises from the temple. Sirius has returned. Priests softly beat sistrum rattles to announce the news. Farmers wake and smile, knowing the Nile will soon swell with life. In that gentle light, offerings of water and lotus blossoms are lifted toward the sky in gratitude. For the Egyptians, this morning star's return was a promise kept by the cosmos, a sign that their world would be renewed once again. All through the night, the temple astronomers kept track of time by the stars. The Egyptians had identified groups of stars called decans that rose at roughly equal intervals as the night progressed. By noting which decan was appearing on the horizon, a priest could tell the hour during darkness long before clocks existed. They even painted these star timetables on coffin lids and tomb ceilings, rows of tiny star symbols to guide a soul through the 12 hours of the night until sunrise. In this way, the stars were not only story and symbol, but also a practical clock shining in the sky. Under the Egyptian sky, Orion and Sirius rose and set as a divine drama. Some nights, storytellers would point to the east, where Orion's stars climbed above the horizon, followed closely by Sirius's blue-white sparkle. They described Osiris and Isis sailing their celestial boats along the Milky Way, a heavenly Nile river in the sky. To their minds, that ghostly white band was a celestial Nile, a river of stars flowing through the heavens, reflecting the real Nile that gave life to their world. Some legends even describe the Milky Way as a river of milk spilled by the sky cow goddess Hathor, creating a shining white path to nourish and guide souls above. Deep inside the darkness of a royal tomb, narrow shafts of stone were aligned precisely toward certain stars. One shaft pointed south to Orion's belt, so that the departed pharaoh's soul could fly out to join Osiris's constellation. Another aimed north at the imperishable stars, the circumpolar stars that never set. The Egyptians believed those undying stars were a celestial realm of eternity. Elsewhere in the sky, Egyptians saw the form of a great hippopotamus goddess with a crocodile's tail, the deity Taweret, protectress of women and children. Night after night, Taweret stood watch in the northern heavens, warding off evil. Not far from her, the outline of a bull's foreleg, what we know as the Big Dipper, marked another celestial symbol. Some said this was the leg of an ox tethered in the sky, representing an aspect of Set, the wild trickster god. These images, painted in stars, were woven into Egypt's tapestry of myth and magic. For these people, the night sky was so sacred that even in death they wished to rest under its eternal light. Deep inside their tombs, they painted ceilings pure midnight blue and adorned them with hundreds of golden stars. In the darkness of a sealed chamber, those stars would glitter in lamplight as priests performed rites, a final comfort to guide the pharaoh's soul to join the undying heavens. To the pharaoh himself, the stars promised a glorious destiny. In the pyramid texts, prayers etched on the stone walls deep inside the pyramids, the king is urged to join the circumpolar stars. The king is a star, one inscription proclaims, an imperishable star in the northern sky. Egyptians believed a righteous king's soul would fly up and take its place among those eternal stars that never set. Thus, immortality meant becoming a light in the darkness. The king would live on as a gleaming point in the sky forever. Beneath this celestial canopy, the Egyptians found comfort and mystery. To them, the night was not an empty darkness, but a living storybook spangled with gods and sacred beings. One can almost picture a family on the riverbank long ago, a cool breeze drifting off the Nile, as an elder traces Osiris's starry form for wide-eyed children. Over the ages, these myths wove meaning into the patterns above, linking heaven and earth. And indeed, the very alignment of monuments reflected this celestial devotion. The three great pyramids on the Giza plateau, for instance, mirror the pattern of Orion's belt in the sky. In this way, the pharaohs inscribed their stories both on earth and in heaven. Far to the north, beyond the tall pine forests and deep fjords, the night sky told a different tale. Imagine a Viking settlement long ago, snow shimmering under moonlight, the breath of livestock steaming in the cold, and above, countless stars glittering in the crystal air. The sky itself sometimes came alive. On rare nights, great curtains of green light trembled above the horizon, the aurora borealis. The Norse gazed at those shimmering lights in awe, believing they were the glow of Valkyrie maidens' armor as they galloped across the sky, gathering fallen heroes to Valhalla. Under this cosmic dome, the Norse people wove grand myths about the sky's creation. They said in the beginning, the gods slew a primordial giant named Ymir, and from his colossal skull they fashioned the arch of heaven. 4 mighty dwarves stood at the sky's corners, holding up the vault of the heavens, and those twinkling stars overhead. To the Norse, they were no random lights. They were sparks flying from the fiery realm of Muspel, caught in Ymir's skull as the world was made. Each star was like a tiny ember of creation, placed by the gods to adorn the night. Though fewer Norse star legends survive, echoes of their celestial lore still sparkle in old sayings and names. On winter nights, they watched 7 bright stars wheeling around the North Star and called them Karlavagnen, the man's chariot. Perhaps they imagined a mighty god, like Thor, riding that glittering wagon across the sky. Opposite the North Star hung a smaller cluster, Kvenavang, the woman's chariot, a sister wagon of stars. And when they looked toward Orion's belt, instead of a hunter's belt, they saw Frigg's distaff, the spindle of their goddess quietly spinning cosmic threads. In these gentle images, a wagon, a spindle, one feels how the Norse wove the familiar comforts of home into the vast night sky. But Norse mythology could be fierce as well as homely. They also spoke of bold deeds marked in the sky. One tale recounts how the thunder god Thor travelled with his companion Orvandil through the icy rivers of Jotunheim. Orvandil's toe froze solid in the frigid water, so Thor broke it off and with a hearty laugh cast the toe up into the sky. There it became a tiny star, Orvandil's toe, twinkling forever as a sign of the hero's safe passage. In another story, Odin or Thor placed the eyes of a slain giant up in the heavens, where they now glimmer as two pale stars. To the Norse, even these pinpoints of light could be born from the exploits of gods and giants, cosmic reminders of daring adventures now forever frozen in the night. To the Norse, even the sun and moon were part of a cosmic chase. They told of two mighty wolves, Skjold and Hati, racing through the sky. Each day, Skjold pursues the sun, and each night, Hati chases the moon. And when either celestial orb is caught for a moment, an eclipse darkens the sky. People would gaze upward in alarm, banging drums or making noise to scare the wolves away. After a tense pause, the sun or moon would slip free from the wolves' jaws, and the sky's light would return. And spanning the sky from horizon to horizon was the pale river of the Milky Way. In the silence of a northern midnight, it arced overhead like a trembling bridge of mist. The Norse marvelled at this band of light, and some called it Bifrost, the shimmering bridge between worlds. By day, Bifrost showed itself as the rainbow, but on clear, dark nights, they saw it as a ghostly road for souls. Many believed this glimmering pathway led to Asgard, realm of the gods, where the steadfast guardian Heimdall kept watch at heaven's gate. One can imagine families huddled by warm hearth fires on long winter nights, glancing up at that soft, gauzy glow and thinking of it as a magical highway, a link between their mortal world and the realms of their deities beyond the darkness. For instance, picture a dragon-prowed longship cutting across dark waves under a dome of stars. The navigator studies the glittering pattern of the sky. He keeps the North Star at the same height above the horizon, knowing this will hold the ship steady on its course. The Milky Way arches overhead like a shimmering river. The Vikings call it the Winter Road, guiding them through the cold seas. In the east, a familiar star rises, a welcome sign that landfall is near. In this way, the Vikings used the sky as both map and compass, letting the stars lead them to new horizons. The heavens were their compass and their canvas, guiding voyages across uncharted waters and whispering old sagas on winter nights. In that cold and beautiful darkness, we sense the mix of awe and comfort these hardy folk drew from their starry stories, fiery sparks of creation, brave heroes, and fragile bridges to realms unseen. Now our journey carries us across the ocean, leaving the polar constellations for new skies. On distant continents, beneath unfamiliar stars, other storytellers, no less imaginative, were gazing upward and spinning their own timeless legends of how the night came to be. In one beloved Native American tale, the world was new, and the night sky an empty canvas. The Great Spirit, or in some tellings the first people, carefully placed glowing embers in the darkness, arranging each star deliberately to form patterns with meaning. Nearby, however, lurked Coyote, the sly trickster, growing impatient with the slow work of creation. Finally, in a burst of mischief, Coyote snatched up the blanket on which the stars were laid out and flung it into the air. Thousands of shining embers scattered wildly across the heavens. They landed haphazardly, some clumping together, others isolated and adrift, and so the sky filled with stars in chaotic profusion. The broad band of the Milky Way, it is said, marks the very trail left by Coyote's paws as he swept the starry embers off their platter. Because of his prank, not every star found its place in a tidy constellation. Some remained without pattern, thrown out of order by the trickster's whim. When people hear this story around the campfire, they often chuckle and glance up at the glittering jumble above. In the tale, the Great Spirit scolds Coyote for his impulsiveness. But what's done cannot be undone. Ever since that night, the sky has been a mix of careful design and happenstance. Yet even Coyote's mischief held a lesson. It gave the heavens a lively mystery, full of unexpected sparkles. There would always be new patterns to search for, new stories to imagine among the scattered stars. Under the Milky Way's gauzy glow, the listeners understand that even the sky's flaws are part of its beauty. The world wasn't meant to be too orderly or predictable. There is wisdom in the sparkle of chance. Perhaps on a still night, if you listen carefully, you might imagine you hear Coyote's mischievous laugh echoing faintly in the distance, delighted with the beautiful chaos he left behind. Far to the east, the Cherokee people had their own explanation for the Milky Way's pale path. They said that long ago, a mystical dog crept into a village and stole some cornmeal from the people's storehouse. Under cover of night, the dog ran back toward the sky, spilling a trail of meal behind him. This faint trail became the Milky Way, which the Cherokee call where the dog ran. In the morning, the villagers saw the powdery band of light above and realized what had happened. Ever since, that dim white path reminds everyone of the stray dog's mischief, and how even a small, earthly theft can leave an everlasting mark among the stars. To many native peoples, the stars were also family. Several legends tell of ancestors who came down from the stars, or of humans taken up to live in the sky world. In one tale, a young man marries a beautiful star woman and ascends with her to dwell among the star people. In another, a curious girl climbs a rope of light into the heavens and becomes a star herself. Such stories deepen the belief that the bright lights above are not distant at all, but rather close and caring. Relatives shining down, keeping watch through the night. Native skywatchers also paid close attention to the one star that never sets, the North Star. To some tribes it was the fixed center of the sky, holding the cosmos together like a peg at the top of the world's teepee. Others saw it as a great chief's campfire, always burning at the tip of the sky dome, while the rest of the stars, his people, circle around it. By keeping that steady light always in view, travelers on Earth could orient themselves in the darkness, knowing that star always pointed the way north. Far across the ocean, beneath southern skies, the peoples of the Pacific Islands looked up at a sky overflowing with stars. Picture a Polynesian voyager standing at the prow of a canoe in the middle of a warm, dark ocean night. Above him, the heavens are so clear that the path of stars reflects on the sea. These master navigators knew every star by heart, steering their boats by the rising of constellations and the colours of distant stars. From childhood, they memorized long chants of star names and positions, creating a mental map of the sky that could guide a canoe across thousands of miles of open water. One revered star, for instance, called Hokulea by Hawaiian wayfinders, known elsewhere as Arcturus, rose in the sky directly above the latitude of Hawaii. By keeping Hokulea low on the horizon ahead, night after night, a navigator could be confident he was sailing along the path toward that distant land. In one popular Polynesian legend, the demigod Maui was responsible for fishing up entire islands from the bottom of the sea, with a little help from the stars. As the tale is told on many islands, Maui one day crafted an enchanted fishing hook from the jawbone of an ancestor. He convinced his skeptical brothers to paddle their canoe far out into the deep ocean, promising that he would catch something astonishing. Under a canopy of glittering stars, Maui cast his magical hook into the sea and let the line sink down, deeper and deeper into the unknown. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the rope went taut with a sudden force. Maui had snagged onto something immense below. He braced his feet and heaved with all his might. The ocean began to churn as slowly the surface of the water bulged. Maui's brothers gripped their paddles and the sides of the canoe, straining to help pull up the mysterious weight. Inch by inch, an enormous shape started to emerge from the depths. A new land was rising. Maui's eyes shone with triumph as he realized he was hauling up a whole island. He warned his brothers not to look back or stop paddling, no matter what they heard or felt, lest the great catch be lost. But curiosity overpowered the brothers. As the first peaks of the island broke through the waves, they couldn't resist glancing backward. In that instant, the fishing line snapped with a thunderous crack. Maui's catch splintered. Instead of one vast land, it broke into dozens of pieces. Those pieces became the scattered islands that now sprinkle the Pacific Ocean, from Hawaii to New Zealand. As for Maui's enchanted fishhook, the legend says it flew up into the sky at the moment the line snapped. There it hung, transformed into a pattern of stars. Even today, people point to it on clear nights. A curved outline among the southern stars, like a giant hook poised to catch the heavens. Western astronomers call it the constellation Scorpius, with its tail curving like a hook. But across Polynesia, it is known as Manaiakalani, Maui's fishhook, hung forever in the sky. Each time navigators find that familiar hook low on the horizon, they feel Maui's guiding presence on their journey. The stars are not just signposts, but kin, shining reminders of a hero's deed and the promise of new land in the great ocean of night. And in those same southern skies, another beacon held meaning. The tight cluster of 4 stars we call the Southern Cross was seen by some islanders, not as a cross at all, but as tapunga, the stone anchor of a celestial canoe. They imagined the Milky Way itself as a great sky canoe drifting across the night, and the Southern Cross, its anchor, dropped to steady the heavens above their ocean world. In Aotearoa, New Zealand, the Maori people celebrated the appearance of a special star cluster called Matariki as the herald of the new year. In the cold dawns of midwinter, those 7 tiny stars of Matariki would rise together just before the sun. Families would gather before sunrise to remember loved ones lost and to celebrate the cycle of life continuing. They believed those little lights carried messages to the heavens. The reappearance of Matariki signalled renewal, the turning of the seasons, a time to prepare the fields for planting, and hope that the coming year would be bountiful. Across Polynesia, different communities marked the year's passage by the stars in similar ways, binding sky and earth in an intimate annual rhythm. Beneath the Southern Cross in the Australian outback, the Milky Way arches overhead in a dazzling sweep. The Aboriginal Australians discern not just stars, but also the dark voids between them. Against the thick starry band, they trace the silhouette of a gigantic emu in the sky. There, Where modern eyes see only darkness, indigenous storytellers see the long neck and body of a great cosmic bird. The emu's head is the dark coal sack nebula near the Southern Cross, and its body stretches along the Milky River of the galaxy. This celestial emu is a creation spirit, a guardian watching over the land. Its appearance in the seasonal sky guides the people. When the emu rises in a certain position at dusk, real emus are laying their eggs on Earth, signaling that it's time to gather those eggs for food. Indeed, when the emu's form stretches across the sky on autumn evenings, elders say, "The emu is running, the eggs are ready." Later in the year, as the emu's shape shifts and syncs with the changing seasons, it tells the people that the egg-laying time has passed. In this way, the sky and the land speak to each other, each reflecting the other's rhythms. Every glance upward is a lesson, every story a map. To many Aboriginal peoples, the stars themselves were alive with spirit. Some say that each bright star is a campfire lit by their ancestral heroes in the sky world. The twinkling lights are the glow of those celestial campfires, reassuring the living that their ancestors watch over them through the long night. As people tell their dreamtime stories under the infinite sky, they feel the presence of family long past, sitting by those starry fires and keeping them company until dawn. So across oceans and continents, from the frozen north to the far southern deserts, humanity has imagined the sky full of beloved characters and ageless lessons. The constellations have been our compass, calendar, and canvas for the oldest stories we know. And remarkably, many of these tales echo one another across cultures. The same cluster of 7 stars, seen as sisters, dancing in distant lands. The Milky Way, envisioned as a river of souls, or a pathway of birds, the world over. Under one sky, separated by great distances, people have been weaving different chapters of a single, universal story written in the stars. Yet our cosmic journey is not over. As we gently turn our gaze eastward, a whole new realm of star lore awaits. One where dragons coil around the pole star, an emperor rules among the heavens, and 2 long-separated lovers meet once a year across a bridge of birds in the Milky Way. The night sky's oldest stories continue under eastern skies, inviting us onward into the next chapter of our voyage among the stars. Across the ocean and under unfamiliar skies, our journey continues gently into the night. The air is cool and still beneath a canopy of stars. In the darkness, over endless forests and plains, an ancient drama unfolds in slow silence. High above, 7 bright stars wheel around the North Star, glimmering through the seasons. These stars form a shape many recognize as a dipper. But long ago, the first peoples of North America saw something more living in that pattern. They saw a great bear prowling the heavens and a band of hunters eternally in pursuit. Imagine the scene as the elders tell it. A mighty bear once roamed the earth, so fearsome and hungry that it devoured the game animals and left villages starving. 7 of the bravest hunters vowed to track this bear down. Through swamp and thicket, they chased it for days, but the bear was cunning and powerful. At last, cornered on the edge of the world with arrows flying, the desperate creature leapt into the sky to escape. The hunters did not hesitate. They too leapt into the heavens, determined to never lose its trail. Look up on a clear night, and you can still witness their cosmic chase. There, the bowl of the Big Dipper, forms the body of the Great Bear, forever fleeing across the starry dome. The three bright stars, trailing behind, the Dipper's handle, are the tireless hunters following in single file. Night after night, year after year, they circle around and around Polaris, the North Star, high above the northern horizon. In spring, the Great Bear rises high, running swiftly ahead of its pursuers. Through the summer, the hunters doggedly close the gap. As autumn arrives, the Sky Bear sinks low toward the western horizon. The old stories say that this is the moment the hunters finally catch up. On a crisp fall evening, the first hunter draws his bow and strikes the bear at last. The wound is fatal, but the Great Bear is no ordinary creature. It is a spirit of the sky. The bear's blood begins to drip down from the heavens. Gently, drop by drop, it falls upon the forests below and stains the leaves of the maple and oak. The green summer canopy transforms almost overnight into vivid hues of red and gold. The bear's lifeblood has painted the autumn woods. Some say the yellow leaves are splashes of fat from the bear's body as the hunters carve it. Yet this is not the end of the Great Bear. By winter, only the bare skeleton of the bear remains. The Dipper now lies low on its back in the early evening, as if the carcass of the bear has been stripped clean. But the spirit of the bear is never gone for long. In the depths of winter, the Great Bear vanishes from sight for a time, invisible in the sun's glare. The people know he is healing, gathering his strength in secrecy. Sure enough, when spring winds melt the snow, the Great Bear reappears on the eastern horizon before dawn. Restored to life, he rises once more into the sky, and the eternal chase begins anew. The three faithful hunters follow, continuing the cycle as they have since the world was young. Their story has no end, only the rhythm of the seasons, the turning of the sky, and the promise that each autumn the heavens will blaze with the bear's final sacrifice. The voice of the narrator softens as the scene gently shifts. The stars above us blur into a new pattern, and the cool northern forests give way to steamy jungles and starlit pyramids. Far to the south, in the lands of the Maya and the Aztec, the night sky inspired different legends, yet no less wondrous. Here, too, the celestial dome was alive with animals and gods, with portents of life and death. And among these, one figure winds through many stories. The serpent. A fiery serpent slithers through the sky of these ancient Americas, connecting heaven and earth. Envision a warm evening in the Yucatan over 1,000 years ago. At the heart of a great Mayan city stands a towering pyramid of stone. Its steep stairways climb toward the heavens, and at the top sits a small temple. The structure is silent and still, awaiting a momentous event. The day is ending. The sun sinks lower, its light turning golden. As drums hush and murmurs cease, people gather around the pyramid's base, all eyes turned upward. This is the temple of Kukulkan, the feathered serpent, and today is the spring equinox. Slowly, the sun touches the horizon. When its rays strike the pyramid's western face, something magical begins. Triangles of light and shadow ripple down the staircase, one after another, forming the sinuous pattern of a serpent's body. A huge snake of sunlight appears to slither downward along the stone steps. It is as if a great serpent is descending from the sky to the earth. The crowd gasps in reverence and delight. They are witnessing the return of Kukulkan. According to Maya belief, this feathered serpent deity travels between the celestial realm and our world. During the equinox, he comes down from the heavens to bless the earth with renewed life for the planting season. For a few enchanting minutes, the glowing serpent undulates on the pyramid, connecting the celestial and terrestrial realms. Then the sun sinks further, the last triangle of light dissolves, and the serpent fades back into stone. Night has fallen, but the promise of spring now fills the air. For the Maya, the sky itself was a living storybook, and serpents were among its most potent symbols. On a moonless summer night, the Milky Way arcs overhead, a pale river of countless stars flowing across the heavens. The Maya called it the White Road. In their imagination, this was no mere river of light, but a path between worlds. They saw in the Milky Way a great celestial serpent stretching from horizon to horizon. Its glittering coils represented a sacred road connecting the realm of the living with Xibalba, the mysterious underworld. When a soul departed this life, it would journey along that shining serpent road to reach the afterlife. And as the seasons turned, the position of this Milky Way serpent in the sky signaled times of change and renewal. Other stars and constellations, too, carried secrets for the Maya. There was an important snake among the stars that they knew as Tzabek, the rattlesnake's tail. Modern astronomers identify it as part of the pattern we call Ophiuchus, near the Scorpius constellation. For Maya astronomer priests, the appearance of Tzabek in the pre-dawn sky heralded the coming rains. It was a celestial marker for the agricultural calendar. When that snake of stars rose just before the sun, it meant the earth would soon be watered, time to sow the crops. The Maya linked Tzabek with Kukulkan himself, their feathered serpent god, since both were bringers of fertility and life. In their codices and carvings, one can find images of a great serpent, intertwined with symbols of clouds and lightning, embodying both the Milky Way and the storm-bringing sky. For these people of the corn and jungle, the heavens were alive with serpents of light and water, guiding the rhythms of planting and harvest. Hundreds of miles to the west, the Aztec people gazed at the same night sky with equal awe. In the imperial capital of Tenochtitlan, built on a lake island under velvet black skies, they too traced the outlines of creatures and omens in the stars. The Aztecs inherited much of their sky lore from earlier cultures and made it their own, blending myth and observation into a grand cosmic drama. And like the Maya, they told of a serpent in the heavens, a very different serpent, one of fire and battle. On a clear night, far from city lights, you might see it, a sudden streak of light that tears across the sky and vanishes in a heartbeat. Today, we call this a meteor, a flash of burning dust in the atmosphere. But to the Aztecs, this was Xucoatl, the fire serpent, unleashed from the gods. These fiery snakes would dart through the sky without warning, and the Aztecs saw in them the weapons of their patron god, Huitzilopochtli. In their legends, Huitzilopochtli, the sun, was born on a holy mountain, armed with the Xucoatl as a spear or lightning bolt. At the moment of his birth, he battled the stars and the moon, which were personified as his rebellious siblings. With the blazing serpent weapon in hand, the young sun god struck down his enemies, casting their fragmented bodies into the sky. Thus, in myth, the scattered stars we see could be the vanquished remnants of that primeval battle, and each shooting star a fiery serpent hurled by the triumphant sun to remind the world of his victory. Yet the Aztecs also had peaceful rites entwined with the stars, especially when it came to the great cycles of time. Every 52 years, the Aztec calendar wheels would complete a full cycle, an event that was met with both hope and terror. As one such cycle drew to a close, all the fires in the Aztec land were extinguished. Darkness fell over cities and countryside alike, save for the twinkle of the stars above. People waited in tense vigil, fearful that the world might end this very night if the gods were displeased. Priests climbed to the top of a sacred hill with a sacrificial victim and looked to the sky for a sign. They were watching the stars for the rise of a particular constellation that held profound significance. The Aztecs called it the fire drill. The fire drill was the name they gave to a configuration of stars we know as the Orion constellation, specifically the 3 stars of Orion's belt and the cluster of stars just below it. To the Aztecs, these stars resembled the wooden hand drill used to start sacred fires. As the midnight of the cycle's end approached, everyone's eyes were on the eastern horizon. At last, Orion's 3-star belt appeared, rising steadily. It was the signal. The priests took a stick and drilled it into a board on the victim's chest, quite literally starting a new fire in the cavity of his heart. Flames sprang forth, and with them a collective sigh of relief from the people. The sun would be reborn. The world would continue for another 52-year round. Across the valley, bonfires were lit one by one as the glad news spread that the heavens had given their consent. The fire serpent in the sky had aligned. The new era begun. From our modern perspective, it is a sobering ritual. Yet for the Aztecs, it was an act of renewal and faith in the cosmos. They believed that if the stars did not align, if the fire drill did not rise, demons from the darkness would descend and devour the world. On that night of the new fire, countless eyes anxiously scanned the sky for any anomaly. An eclipse, a shooting star at the wrong moment, anything could spell doom. One can imagine an uneasy hush over the normally bustling city, broken only by muffled prayers and the crackling of torches as people gazed upward. But with Orion's timely rising and the birth of the new flame, jubilation followed. Drums, songs, and dances celebrated the cosmos set right again. The celestial serpent of fire had spared them. The sun would return at dawn. These vivid traditions of the Maya and Aztec show a deep reverence for serpents in the sky, be they bringers of life-giving rain or omens of destruction and renewal. Through their eyes, the heavens were not cold, distant lights. They were alive with gods and spirits. A shimmering snake of stars could foretell the planting season. A flickering meteor could carry the will of a war god, and the carefully watched rising of a constellation could determine the fate of the world. It was a sky of immense power and mystery, one that required respect, careful observation, and at times, bold intervention through ritual. Now the scene shifts again, drifting farther south along the spine of the Americas. The humid jungles and plains fall away, and we ascend into towering mountains beneath a crystal-clear sky. We find ourselves in the high Andes, where the air is thin, the nights are cold, and the stars gleam with an unrivaled brilliance. Here lived the Inca, children of the sun, masters of stone and cloud. They built their cities on mountaintops and worshipped the sun and moon, but they also paid close attention to the countless stars overhead. On these lofty plateaus, the Inca developed a unique relationship with the night sky, one unlike any other we've seen. For while most cultures connect the bright stars into constellations, the Inca also looked at the darkness between the stars and saw shapes there. In the misty glow of the Milky Way, they perceived not just stars, but shadows. And within those shadows, they saw the forms of animals, sacred to their world. It is a late winter night above Cusco, the Inca capital. Stretching from horizon to horizon is the ghostly river of the Milky Way, known to the Inca as Mayu, the celestial river. It mirrors the winding course of the great Urubamba River far below on Earth. Along the bright band of Mayu, your eyes catch sight of several inky black patches where the starry backdrop is mysteriously absent. Modern astronomers recognize these as dark nebula, clouds of interstellar dust, obscuring the starlight. But the Inca had a more poetic understanding. To them, these were Yana Fuyu, the dark clouds, and within them lived the celestial animals. Just as llamas, foxes, and serpents come to drink from rivers on earth at night, so did their spiritual counterparts gather at the celestial river in the sky, their silhouettes visible in the darkness, blocking the light. Most beloved and important of these dark cloud constellations was Yakana, the great llama. If you gaze at the southern Milky Way on a clear night, you might discern her shape. There by the Southern Cross, a large, llama-like outline can be imagined in the dark void against the starry field. The llama's long neck stretches along the Milky Way, and her body follows, with legs tucked beneath. The Inca saw not one, but two llamas here, a mother llama and her calf. The mother llama's eyes were marked by two brilliant stars shining white against the darkness. The stars we know as Alpha and Beta Centauri, among the brightest in the sky. Night after night, the great llama watches over the Andes, her baby nestled close, nursing at the mother's side in that eternal cosmic pasture. But Yakana is much more than a pattern of darkness. She is alive in Inca lore. The people said that this llama in the sky was the Kamaska, the life force and guardian spirit of all llamas on earth. She wanders the celestial river each night, drinking from its starlit waters. As she moves, her fleece grows ever blacker and heavier with the water she absorbs. If the great llama happens to stop and rest upon the ground during her nightly journey, it is a blessing of unimaginable fortune. One old story tells that a man once found Yakana had paused atop him as he slept outdoors. He awoke to find himself smothered by thick llama wool. When dawn broke and the celestial llama rose back into the sky, the man gathered that heavenly wool. It shone blue, white, black, and brown, every colour of the llamas that would ever be. From that gift, he became rich in llama herds, all descended from the divine fleece Yakana left behind. Ever after, it said, if Yakana's shadow falls upon a person, they will have prosperity and abundance. The Inca also believed that Yakana performed a duty vital to all life, preventing destruction. High in the lonely mountains at midnight, when no human is watching, Yakana, the llama, drinks greedily from the great oceans of the world. With her long neck, she sips the waters of Pacific and Atlantic, of all the seas, taking in not just water, but the sorrows of mankind, the tears of grief, the pain of hunger, the thirst of all living beings. She drinks and drinks until her belly is full. By doing so, she keeps the oceans from overflowing and flooding the earth. Then, before the first light of dawn, Yakana returns to her place among the stars, carrying away our suffering in her belly. When she rises, the sun follows soon after, bringing a new day to a world kept safe from the deluge. Thus, the Great Lama ensures balance, holding back the flood and giving humanity another chance to live in harmony each day. Yakana was not the only creature in the Inca firmament. The dark lanes of the Milky Way hosted a whole menagerie. Mashakuai, the serpent, stretched out in another black rift of stars, guarding over the health of crops and warding off plagues of snakes on earth. There was Hampatu, the toad, Atok, the fox, Utu, the Andean tinamou bird, all outlined by the absence of stars, all considered active, living spirits in the sky. The Inca watched these dark constellations as closely as the bright ones. When the llama and serpent and others would emerge in the night sky at certain times of year, it signaled planting or harvest, or the birth of animal young. The very rising of Yakana over Cusco each year, around November, marked the onset of the rainy season in the Andes, when llamas breed and pastures green. So the Inca herders and farmers read the sky like a calendar, watching the movements of these celestial animals. To them, the glow of the Milky Way and its dark silhouettes were a reflection of life on Earth and a source of guidance from the gods. As we stand on an Andean mountaintop, marveling at the sky's dark wonders, a soft wind begins to blow, ushering us onward. The stars above blur and shift once more, and now our view widens to encompass the entirety of the New World, from the ice of the far north to the tropics of the south. Countless indigenous peoples across these lands, each with their own language and landscape, have looked up on clear nights and found inspiration, guidance, and comfort in the stars. It is a grand tapestry of star lore that spans continents, diverse as the earth below, yet curiously connected under the same sky. Our final leg of this night's journey will be a gentle tour of a few of these tales, scattered across the Americas like jewels, each shining with its own hue of wonder. Travel now to the frozen Arctic, where the long night reigns for much of the year. The air is sharp and cold, and the ground sparkles with snow under the faint glow of aurora. Here live the Inuit and other Arctic peoples who have learned to survive in one of the harshest climates on Earth. In winter's deep darkness, when the sun leaves the sky for weeks, the Inuit turn their attention upward to the stars as guides and companions. Though their star lore is not as extensive as that of more southerly cultures, for their time to observe the stars is brief each year, they have rich legends explaining what they see in the celestial dome. One such Inuit tale might sound familiar, as if a distant echo of the Great Bear story we heard earlier, yet with its own northern twist. They tell of a great polar bear named Nanurjuk, a spirit bear of immense strength, who was pursued by hunters long ago. In one version of the story, the bear was cornered by a pack of dogs on an ice floe, and rather than surrender, it leapt into the sky. 3 brave Inuit hunters, not willing to lose their prey, jumped with their dogs and even their sled, right off the edge of the ice and into the heavens behind the bear. If you know where to look on a winter night, you can see them there forevermore. The 3 stars of Orion's belt are those 3 hunters, running in a line after Nanurjuk. The smaller cluster of stars just below Orion's belt, what astronomers call Orion's sword, can be imagined as the hunter's dog sled in pursuit behind them. The bear itself glows as a reddish star at the front of their path, the star we call Aldebaran in the constellation Taurus, which the Inuit recognize as the eye of the great polar bear. The other stars around it, the glittering Hyades cluster, are the pack of dogs swarming the bear. As the legend goes, the chase continued into the sky, but one of the hunters encountered a problem. On the way up, he dropped his warm mitten. Concerned for his frostbitten hand, that hunter turned back to retrieve it, and thus he did not make it into the sky with the others. He remains near the horizon. Some say he became the bright star Rigel, which lags behind Orion's belt, while his two companions and their dogs press on after the bear. The Inuit say this is why Rigel is a little apart from the line of belt stars, a lonely but determined soul who nearly caught the bear, but chose human need over glory. Up above, the celestial bear hunt continues each winter, but just as in the southern tale, the bear never truly dies. It circles around and around, sometimes evading its pursuers, sometimes seeming almost within reach. And in an interesting turn, some Inuit communities impart a practical lesson to this story. They say that the hunter who went back for his mitten is the one who survived to tell the tale. The message to their children is clear. Never neglect your clothing and safety, not even in pursuit of greatness, or you may never return home. Thus the stars not only entertain, but teach, twinkling reminders of both adventure and wisdom in the Arctic sky. Moving southward from the land of ice and snow, we find ourselves under the broad skies of the North American plains and deserts, where other indigenous peoples have spun their own stellar yarns. Here, the nights are often crystal clear, and the stars seem to sprinkle down almost within reach. In these regions, the heavens provided a canvas for rich mythologies and lessons. One famous story comes from the Navajo, Diné, people of the American Southwest, a tale that explains why the stars are scattered across the sky in such seeming disorder. In the beginning of time, Navajo storytellers say, the sky was a black velvet blanket of nothingness, waiting to be decorated. The holy people, the supernatural beings of the Navajo, set out to create the stars. First boy and first girl carefully gathered glowing stones and placed them one by one into the sky, forming pleasing patterns and constellations that would guide and inspire those on earth. The work was deliberate and orderly. Each star had its planned position. But as the legend has it, nearby lurked Coyote, the trickster. Coyote was impatient and full of restless energy. He watched the slow, meticulous progress of the star placement and grew increasingly agitated. Why was it taking so long? Why plan every tiny star? In his mischief, Coyote decided to hurry things along in his own chaotic way. When the holy people stepped away momentarily, perhaps to admire their nascent constellations from a distance, Coyote seized the sack of remaining starstones. With a wild gleam in his eye, he flung the entire sack's contents into the sky. The sparkling stones flew out in a great spray, landing wherever chance took them. Some clumped densely into the whitish band, now known as the Milky Way. Others scattered apart into lonely, dim points. The orderly process was ruined. The careful patterns were scrambled irretrievably. The holy people were furious at Coyote's prank, but what was done was done. There was no taking back the countless stars now strewn haphazardly across the heavens. And yet, in the end, the result had its own beauty. The sky was full of stars, far more than would have been placed by hand, and they twinkled in an enchanting, random array. The Navajo thus explain, that this is why the heavens have both familiar constellations, from the early careful work, and random stars with no patterns at all, thanks to Coyote's reckless toss. It is a reminder that life is a balance of order and chaos, planning and chance. On a deeper level, it also teaches humility. The holy people could not completely control everything, and even a mischief maker had a role in shaping the world. On crisp desert nights, as Navajo families sit around their fires, they can look up and see the Milky Way. They call it Yikaistaha, the glittering path, and know that its myriad stars are the handiwork of Coyote, flung there in a moment of divine mischief. Now our gaze travels even farther south, beyond the equator, to the lush rainforests of the Amazon and the broad savannas and mountains that surround it. Here, under skies that wheel different constellations into view, indigenous peoples from dozens of distinct cultures also forged deep connections with the stars. For them, the night sky became a mirror of their vibrant natural world, a cosmic reflection of the rainforests teeming with life, and a calendar by which to time their lives in a land of seasonal rains and floods. Among the many peoples of lowland South America, the stars tell stories filled with animals familiar from the jungle by day. Birds, fish, reptiles, and of course, the jaguar, the great spotted cat that haunts the forest by night. In the traditional lore of certain Brazilian and Guarani-speaking tribes, there is a terrifying figure known as the celestial jaguar. They say that this jaguar is the only creature bold enough to chase the sun and moon. By day, he stalks the sun across the sky, and by night, he prowls after the moon. Normally, these luminous siblings always manage to evade the jaguar's jaws. But now and then, the hungry jaguar catches up to his prey, and a devouring begins. On those occasions, people on Earth see the light of the sun or moon grow dim, turning an eerie colour, being gradually swallowed by darkness. An eclipse is underway, and the people know the jaguar has seized the sun or moon in his mouth. But they also know what must be done to save them. Humans must band together to frighten the jaguar into releasing its prize. During a lunar eclipse, villagers emerge from their homes banging pots, shouting, firing arrows into the air, and making a tremendous ruckus. During a solar eclipse, they might play drums and flutes and yell toward the sky. All this commotion is meant to startle the celestial jaguar, to convince him that his own life is in danger if he persists. Happily, these tactics always work. After a time, the jaguar relents, and the sun or moon slips from his jaws back to freedom, gradually returning to full brightness. Disaster is averted, thanks to the courage and unity of the people. They know, however, that the jaguar is never truly gone. He only slinks back into the darkness to wait, and they must remain vigilant, generation after generation, to ensure he never devours the world completely. If you lie back on a canoe drifting along the Amazon River on a clear night, you might see the stars that embody this drama. High in the southern sky glints a pattern of stars that some Westerners call the Southern Cross, and its surrounding constellations. But an Amazonian stargazer might pick out different shapes there. The outline of a jaguar and an anteater locked in combat. Some say the jaguar's stars rise during the dry season, while the anteater's constellation comes to prominence when the rains are due. Among the Ticuna people of the northwest Amazon, there's a story that in the middle of the year, the jaguar in the sky is seen pouncing upon an enormous anteater. The dry season is the time of scarcity and tension, the jaguar's time of dominance. But as the cycle turns, the tables are reversed. By the end of the season, the anteater has thrown off the jaguar's attack and stands victorious. Both animals then fade from the sky with the oncoming clouds, making way for the wet season and the appearance of other constellations, such as the tortoise, who slowly climbs upward, bringing the nurturing rains. In this way, the Ticuna see their natural annual cycle, drought and flood, struggle and relief, played out in advance by their star figures. The jaguar and anteater fight in the heavens so that balance can return on Earth. Strength and caution, power and patience, each has its season. Elsewhere across the Amazon, different nations have different sky creatures. There are fish and serpents, birds like the rhea, a large flightless bird akin to an ostrich, stepping through the stars, and great snakes and anacondas winding along the Milky Way. One common thread is the use of the stars as reliable keepers of time in a place where the environment can change dramatically throughout the year. Indigenous river dwellers keenly watch for certain star groupings to rise or set at dusk. For example, when a cluster of stars shaped like a serpent's head sinks in the west at sunset, the people know that the season of heavy rains and river floods is about to begin. They call this grouping the Jararaca, a type of viper, and its cosmic setting in November correlates with real vipers emerging in the jungle and the rivers swelling with early rains. In response, fishing techniques and travel routes will change, and preparations will be made for the wet months. Similarly, another constellation might signal the start of the dry season when it appears in the dawn sky, cueing farmers to begin planting certain crops on the fertile floodplains as the waters recede. To these communities, the sky is a vital almanac, each constellation a page indicating when to sow, when to fish, when to expect fruit or game, and when to be wary of nature's extremes. Their star lore is deeply practical, yet woven through with the poetry of myth. For the stars are also ancestors, heroes, and animals who enacted the deeds that set the world's patterns long ago. Under the immense dome of the sky, from the high Arctic down to the equatorial forests, the first peoples of the Americas found constellations of legend that spoke to their hearts and their needs. Each culture looked up and saw something familiar yet magical. Their own landscapes, their values, their fears and aspirations reflected among the stars. A bear hunt, a serpent descending with the rain, a protective llama, a trickster scattering stars, a jaguar stalking the moon. These are just a few of the countless tales written in light. They were passed down in spoken words around crackling fires, or murmured under the breath of a lone traveller, using the stars to find his way home. Over millennia, these stories guided actions, reinforced morals, and soothed the eternal human curiosity about our place in the cosmos. Now, as part 2 of our journey draws to a gentle close, we take a moment to appreciate the rich mosaic of star myths we have wandered through. The night has grown late, and the stars shift in their courses. Yet above us remains that awe-inspiring panorama of glimmering lights, the same sky that inspired all these legends. We feel the presence of those ancient storytellers around us, whispering that there are still more stories in the stars yet to explore. The constellations we've met, the Great Bear and the Hunters, the Serpent of Fire, the Llama in the sky, the myriad Arctic and Amazonian creatures, all shine together now in our minds, each a point in the great constellation of human imagination. Our path through the night is not finished. With a sense of calm wonder, we will continue onward, ready to discover what other secrets and sagas the brilliant night sky has yet to reveal. The stars await, and the story goes on.